there a deeper detail of what's behind the numbers?
Thank you.
So we also sent you another document that is the deep budget detail. So it goes right from the city manager's budget all the way to through the general fund, and then it does each one of the enterprise and special revenue funds.
Okay, so I do have that document.
You should have gotten a budget detail document on Monday, May 16th, 18th.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So the only person I don't see is Linda. Does anybody know if Linda is joining us?
Mr. Mayor, we'll keep an eye in the attendees, but I don't see her there at this point either.
Left Linda a message on her phone.
Okay, thank you for doing that. All right, with that, hopefully she'll join us. And so we'll call the meeting to order, and I will welcome everyone to the May 28, 2020 electronic meeting of the City Council. We are meeting electronically due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020 number 04. Please note that in accordance with the Governor's emergency order, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. Instructions are provided on our agenda on the City of Concord's website at concordnh.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this evening's meeting. All members of the City Council have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting, and the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website address: us02web.zoom.us/j/84959032690. If any member of the public does not have website access, they may dial the telephone number 929-205-6099 and enter the webinar ID number 849-5903-2690. Those who want to provide a public testimony in the public hearing portion of this meeting, and it will not be this meeting, you are connected to the Zoom website. You may click on the raised hand icon, attendee section, make a request. When the time is appropriate, you'll be recognized by me to provide your testimony. For members of the public who are not participating by phone, you may dial *9 to alert you may want to testify. We will not be using the chat function in this room for this meeting. Please note that testimony is only allowed for agenda items and have been scheduled for that public hearing. The public participation is not authorized for any other items on the agenda. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled to at that time. Please note that all votes will be taken during this meeting shall be a roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When you state your presence at the meeting, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Madam Clerk, if you may call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard.
Here at home, no one else in the room or in the house.
Mayor Boulay.
I am present in my work office and no one else is here.
Councilor Champlin.
I'm present in a room in my house, and Susan Champlin or Madeline Champlin may pass through the room.
Councilor Fennessy.
I am here. I am in a room by myself at my house. Hopefully nobody comes in, but I have my headphones if they do.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
I am here in my home, and no one is in the room with me.
Councilor Hatfield.
I'm here at home and no one's in the room with me.
Councilor Keach.
I am present and I am home alone.
Councilor Kennison.
Home alone too.
Councilor Kretovic.
I am at my home. Bill Kretovic or Jack Kretovic are in the house.
Thank you. Councilor Matson.
I am home and I'm alone in this room.
Councilor Nyan.
I am present. I am at home. There is no one else in the room with me.
Councilor Pierce.
Present, and I am home alone.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Present, and I'm in the room alone.
Councilor Todd.
Here at home, alone in this room.
And Councilor Werner.
I am here at home. My spouse, Marianne Gashtig, may pass through the room.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good to see everyone. Just a reminder, if you have any questions and trouble accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. Reminder to the council members, please mute yourself when not speaking. Please click on the hand raise icon in the participant section of your Zoom screen. Also, if you're in the viewing, the gallery view, you can wave your hand in front of the camera to make sure you are heard. If you are in your Zoom screen, change your view to the upper right corner from speaker view to gallery view to see all panelists. So it takes us to our agenda this evening. We have one item on the agenda. That is item number 4. And Madam Clerk, could you read that, please?
Yes, it's a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for and accept emergency management funds due to the city's COVID-19 emergency response.
Thank you very much. It's listed under consent, but we're not going to treat it as consent. So, Mr. Mayor, do you want to add anything to this?
Your Honor, members of the council, given the COVID state of emergency, it's required us to take certain actions, procure supplies, and undertake expenditures that were not previously budgeted for or contemplated. So I'll just read you a small piece of this. We plan to seek all available resources that could help offset these needs and expenses. And we have a resolution that you have available to you to authorize my office to apply for and accept services, equipment, supplies, materials, or funds by the way of gift, grant, or loan due to the city's COVID-19 emergency management response. Give you some examples: the CARES Act, the Governor's Office of Emergency Relief and Recovery, Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and Department of Justice. So far, we've had good success with these resources. However, they are very tight time frames, and we need to respond very quickly. The first one's coming up next week, or one of the ones that we're doing is coming up next week, I should say, and there'll be several after that. So to make sure, in the abundance of caution, that I have the ability to, and the flexibility to apply for those and accept those dollars, I'd like the City Council's authority to do so. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions of the manager? You all should have copies of the resolution as well as the report from Mr. Bahia.
Councilor Kretovic moves approval.
Second, Bouchard.
We have a motion to adopt it or to authorize the manager to apply. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton. Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Councilor Kennison.
That was a yes.
Thank you. Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Motion's adopted. Does anybody else have anything to come before the group before we adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, I actually had a question for the manager.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you? I
I
apologize.
didn't raise my hand. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Mr. Espel, I was wondering, you have been helpful in updating us on what the city is pursuing on its own behalf, but I was wondering if you could speak to what the city is doing to assist local businesses and other entities in the city who might be able to access either similar sources of funding or other sources of funding. Thinking of our small businesses and others in the community who probably could really use help. And I just wonder if we're working with them to encourage them and assist them in applying for funding.
Councilor, I was going to cover that under the business development, economic development section of the community development budget. Would that be acceptable?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Bouchard.
Second. Matson, second.
Very good. We have a motion made and seconded to adjourn. Madam Clerk, can call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard.
Yes.
Mayor Boulay.
Yes.
Councilor Champlin.
Yes.
Councilor Fennessy.
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton. Yes. Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach. Councilor Keach.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Kennison.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Yes.
Councilor Matson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
Yes.
And Councilor Werner.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. We stand adjourned. Hey, welcome. I want to welcome you all to the May 28th, 2020 electronic meeting of the Finance Committee. We are meeting electronically due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04. Please note that in accordance with the governor's emergency order, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing this meeting. Instructions are provided on our agenda on the City of Concord's website at concordnh.legistar.com/calendar.aspx. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the Finance Committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting, and the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website address: us02web.zoom.us/j/84959032690. If any member of the public does not have website access, they may dial the telephone number of 929-205-6099 and enter the webinar ID of 849-5903-2690. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have to reschedule it at that time. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. Mr. LeBron, I believe you're up.
I would be glad to. Councilor Bouchard.
Here.
Mayor Boulay.
Present.
Councilor Champlin.
Here.
Councilor Champlin.
Here.
Councilor Fennessy.
Here.
Grady Sexton. Here. Councilor Hatfield.
Here.
Councilor Keach.
Here.
Councilor Kennison.
Here.
Councilor Kretovic.
Here.
Councilor Mattson.
Here.
Councilor Nyan.
Present.
Councilor Pierce.
Here.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Here.
Councilor Todd.
Here.
Councilor Warner.
Here.
All in attendance.
Great. Thank you very much. Just a reminder for the public, if you have any questions or trouble accessing this meeting, please call 603-230-4619 or send an email to citycouncilmeeting@concordnh.gov. So this evening for our Finance Committee, we have a very packed agenda. The first thing is we have the minutes for May 18th and May 21st. And if you don't mind, I'm going to ask that we hold off to adopt those or take them up to the next meeting. I just received them about 15 minutes prior to the meeting, and I haven't had a chance to look at them. So as a courtesy, if you'd all be willing to just wait, that'd be great. Appreciate that. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So tonight for presentations, for the general fund budget, we are going to review the Community Development Department, the Library, Parks and Recreation, and Human Services. Following that, we'll be discussing the Capital Improvement Program, which includes both the TIF districts or tax increment financing districts, as well as the Capital Improvement Program. The only thing that I would just like to share before we begin is we do have the capacity to put up, like we normally do when we go through the capital budget, the actual section by section. It's going to get real clumsy. Although we have the ability to do it, we got to show the screens. So I'm not sure if you all have the ability to you either have a paper copy or you're on another computer and you can see, or you have the ability to see both at the same time. If you can, then we'll have Mr. Walsh just go through talking about the changes in the capital budget. But if you wish, we can also put it up on the screen. It's really where your comfort level is. Any thoughts?
What would the members of the public do, Mr. Mayor?
Well, as you know, if you go on to the city website has the whole budget present, and you could literally follow along if you were to look at the city website.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hawkins.
Mine was a similar question. I'm looking at the attendee list and I see a lot of familiar names that may be able to follow along with two different pieces, but I would just take a quick glance to see if we have members of the public who may have difficulty and may not have two different devices with them right now.
Council Kennison?
Yeah, I have two devices, but I don't seem to be able to get the budget material.
Okay, that makes it real simple. We're gonna put them up on the screen, and we're gonna do the best we can. I just encourage you to be patient, and we'll make our way through. Okay. So with that, first thing we'll be doing is taking up the Community Development Department. You can all look. I believe it's starting on page 108. And Mr. Manager, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The correct your item agenda number 4, and that's on page 108. Community development starts, and I'll touch on it briefly. The revenues budget to budget are down $315,400 or 19.2%, and this is mainly due to construction permits are down $309,000, licenses are down $5,100, inspection fees are up $7,000. Timber sales are up $6,000 and transfers are up $44,700. So the net is, again, $315,400 down. Expenses budget to budget are up $89,000 or 2.5%. This increase is mainly due to wage and benefit increases and contract services increase. And that's because we're holding an associate engineer position open for half the year in the budget in the engineering division, and have allocated some of the resources for outside services in case we need them, hence the increase in the outside services costs. Transfers out is down $33,800. Glad to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for the manager on anything within community development? And of course, community development, just remind everybody that it's code, engineering, planning, as well as economic development. Councilor Hatfield, I believe you have a question.
I do, and I have 3 questions that probably are for different folks. So if you'd like, I could just lay out the 3 questions, and then the manager could decide who should answer them. Or would you like me to do it one at a time?
Would you go ahead and ask the questions and?
Okay, so one is I think for the city planner, just to get an update on the form-based code and whether it's on track, and if she sees the schedule needing to change and if that impacts her thinking for 2021. My second question was related to the urban tree inventory. In one of the notes that talked about that being completed, and I wondered if it was and if it's available. And then my third question relates to permit fees. And whether the city has penalties that are charged when someone doesn't have a permit. Those are my 3 questions. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Manager?
Okay, so we'll take these in the order Councilor Hatfield brought them up. Form-based code, I'll go to Mr. Bahia, who actually is online with us. And if you could answer that one or get information there.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. So regarding the form-based code, so as you know, phase 1 was projected to be submitted to you for adoption actually next month. And we have basically the phase 1 is done. The final draft, we have been reviewing it with legal over the last several weeks. And that review has somewhat been complicated, just because of the fact that having 2 separate codes from a legal perspective is somewhat, I wouldn't say it's unique in the country, but it's novel around here. And so we're trying to make sure that the legal department is absolutely confident that they can approve of this, give it a seal of approval for recommendation to you. So our goal is still to get you that phase 1 document as soon as possible. As to phase 2 is the part of the project that will require a significant amount of public input. It's sort of the visioning piece of the document. So we had projected early on that there would be several charrettes and public hearings and public meetings. In light of COVID, that has put a wrench in the works to a certain extent. We are going to have to figure out an alternative way to do this to ensure that the public has access and can see plans and has the ability to do the types of things you've probably seen in charrettes, but in a virtual world, unless things change dramatically. So we are working diligently to get this stuff done. It's just a question of the external influences right now and trying to manage those. I would estimate that phase 2 will be adopted at some point in 2021. I just can't at this point give you a real certain time frame.
Okay, Councilor Hatfield, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
If I could just, before you begin the next question, Councilor Champlin, you raised your hand. Did you have a question regarding that particular item, or no, there's something different? Something different. Okay, Mr. Manager, the next question.
So the next question is the urban tree inventory. Again, Mr. Bahia, could you answer that one?
I was actually going to defer that one to Beth Fence the Marker.
Thank you, Brigard.
Yep, sorry.
Okay. Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Beth.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So we are anticipating to complete it by the end of this fiscal year. Things got slowed down a little bit. Volunteers from the tree committee are split, divided, and conquered, and the information is slowly trickling in. So I'm working with Craig Tufts at Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission to hopefully compile that data and get it out in the next couple of weeks. And we can share it with everybody once it's ready.
Is that good?
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Manager, third question.
Okay, permit fees, penalties. Mr. Bahia?
So relative to the building permit fees, so the city does have an ordinance where if someone is found to be in violation of basically doing work without benefit of permit, the ordinance says that we charge 25% to that individual or that contractor in terms of the value of the permit, 25% in addition to surcharge for the first offense, 50% for a second offense, and then any offense from there on would be 100% of the value of the permit. We don't have a lot of these because, as you can imagine, unless we have somebody with a track record who we know is a habitual offender, that's different. But most of the time what we find is someone doesn't pull a permit, particularly individuals, homeowners, it's just because they weren't aware that they needed to pull a permit. So we try to work with people as much as we can. Any given year, I imagine we probably have about a half dozen of these sort of violations where we'll actually assess the surcharge.
Thank you. Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Please.
So would any penalties assessed, would that show up under construction permits revenue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilor Hatfield threw a curveball. I thought she was going to reiterate the question that she asked during our city council session. So I will ask that question.
Thank you. I recognized her first, and then she fooled me too.
She's crafty.
Councilor Champlin, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. The question, if I recall it, and actually it's on my mind too, is what efforts, what is the city doing to assist local businesses in applying for, I assume this was her question, applying for federal or state assistance in order, business assistance in order to ensure that they have a chance of survival during this economic downturn.
Okay. Yes, we'll bring Susie Pegg on to answer that question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're up, Susie.
Thank you. So back in March, when this all started, I quickly triaged what I needed to do, action I needed to do to sustain the current investment we have in the city. This was the first priority for the city from the economic development front. So in early April, I created and circulated a regional business survey for the whole business community. And this was sent via direct mail, social media, and through our partners in the city. Alongside it, at the same time, I created a city business resource information page that's continually updated when needed with additional information. I try not to put too much information on that because people just get information overload right now. But anything that's really relevant to the business community goes on that, and it's posted out through our social media channels as well. I've also engaged with our local partners, such as In Town Concord and the Chamber of Commerce, to help push key messages out. And we meet on a weekly basis, on the phone, should I say, to share information and webinars aimed at the business community. And I've also been working very closely since all this started with the federal SBA and the local level SBA, and that was in early April. On April the 1st, myself in town and chamber worked with Concord TV to produce a community connections video, again, focusing on the business community and the COVID-19 on what we're doing for our businesses as a partnership. The 11th of April was the first phase of the federal funding, known as PPP, but the Paycheck Protection Plan. Again, we posted it, we put it across our contacts. I contacted my contacts personally by email. I used LinkedIn Premium to contact people. And then this was closely followed by the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan. And I did the same thing again with our partners, doing a whole full-on effect across our business community. The May the 1st, I updated the business survey I originally sent out. And again, we look like we've had a good response to the business survey. It's just given us an idea on what their needs are in the community. May 18th was the most recent funding stream we've heard around, the Main Street Relief Program from the Governor's Office of Emergency Relief and Recovery and the Department of Revenue Administration. We were aware of this since May the 13th, but all the details hadn't been finalized at that stage. But then through my partner, the SBA, once she had all the links and everything, details put together, she sent that over to me pretty quickly, which again, we distributed through ourselves and partners. We also asked our downtown building owners to circulate that to our tenants with a note to either direct message me on Facebook, call or email if they have any questions about the form whatsoever. It's a really easy form to fill in. And I have to say there was no one got back to me, but I heard that everybody were easy filling this in. We also did a city emergency alert on the back of that to let all our companies know that we'd done this. And that all happened in one morning. We were pretty quick and swift at turning that around. On May the 20th, I followed up on the Main Street Relief Program by walking the Central Business District and talking safely, I note, where I could to business owners to ensure that they were aware of the tight deadline and ask if they'd applied for anything like the PPP or the other one. Those of that I talked to, most were aware of it. Some actually weren't interested in pursuing it as they were still using the PPP funds. And they were kind of, they didn't want to go for any of the funding until they actually could use all the PPP funds, so they didn't get any penalties. And some were actually still viable, and they were operating without any funding at all from the feds or the state, and they were quite happy at that. At the same time, I also conducted a survey on what businesses were open, closed, or using alternative methods of trading. I'll be doing exactly the same survey next month at exactly the same time to see how our community is responding and see if things are picking up even better than they were the time I did this the other week. I'm also extending that across the entire business community just so I can keep a footprint or a pulse on what is happening out there. Business retention right now is top of my radar screen, but I have been communicating with the prospective businesses I've been working with before COVID hit, just to make sure that they know we're still here, they know we're still a good friend, a partner, we still want to work with them, and we're moving that on. The city's message that we're pushing out is that, really loud and clear, is that we are open for business. And I want to thank my fellow colleagues in community development in helping to keep the city running, either through working with stakeholders on their outside dining needs, permitting, project development, and general code requirements, to say such a few. And even our downtown services in keeping the city clean and tidy throughout all of this. It has been recognized by business owners, especially in the main downtown area, and they're very happy about the city's support from what I'm hearing. That's a quick run through on where we are on that support, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Council Fennessy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Pegg. So a question in follow-up to the detail that you just provided. When you've spoken with our business owners, particularly small business owners on Main Street, what is it that they've been asking if anything, from the city to help them out?
The most I'm hearing is we need to open for business. It's not at our level, it's at the governor's level. They've been very good about the city, about how we're supporting them just by providing services. But there's nothing specific apart from, if you hear any funding coming up, can you let us know? Just be there. Just be there if there's anything, like they're looking for a webinar on certain technologies, working with the chamber to support that thing through our arena or someone to deliver on that. But it's been very much looking at the governor's level or the state level rather than here at the city.
Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just following up with Councilor Fennessy's question with the survey. What were your the results that you did with the survey with the needs of the community? Was that the answer that you get the same as what you just said for Councilor Fennessy?
Yeah, it was very much workforce. They're concerned about workforce. Some of those that went on to unemployment, will they come back? Because some of them are actually doing okay on the employment right now, though I think that may change. And again, you know, they're concerned about staying closed too long. They want money in. They need to start selling things. Some of the businesses have been quite good at doing things online platforms. Now we've got outdoor dining. I think that's making a huge impact too. But from the survey, it was we need money. That can be from purchases or from federal state grants, and we need people. And those were the two things that kept hitting on the two surveys that we did.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor?
You should, please. Please.
Follow up?
Yes, please.
And when you say you did the needs in the community, was the survey larger just than the greater Main Street community, or was it the entire business community in the city?
It was the entire business community. We can't just look at Main Street, though it's very important to what we do here. We have to give the love to everybody. They're all taxpayers, and it's important to do a cross section. It was interesting that the manufacturers, they're keeping going. They've got supply chain. Their challenge was sometimes people working from home and social distancing, but they're keeping going. And it's interesting that people are trying to their best to just keep moving forward, keep working with the supply chain. But it's not just Main Street, it's about the whole city of Concord.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me ask you, Ms. Pegg, those survey results, is that something you can share with the council? I don't know that I got those results. Is that something that's can be shared?
We didn't share them because we had an issue with technology and sharing them through SurveyMonkey, which we've been trying to work through. But I'm going to work with our PIO to see if we can consolidate both of those surveys. Also, InTown did a survey specifically for the downtown, the district. It wasn't from us, but there may be something way to consolidate those three surveys and share those with you.
So we had technical problems on both the surveys that we sent out?
Yeah, we're new to SurveyMonkey. Just technology. I love it, but sometimes we hate it. But we had some issues where people couldn't see the results. It was sending black lines across it. So we've been trying to figure out what we need to do to amend that, clean it up for you. But happy to share that once we sorted that out.
Councilor Nyan's son is great with technology if you need help. So
I'll be going to Councilor Nyan.
So yeah,
just let me know, Your Honor.
You got it, Mr. Manager. So if you could, in the future, share those results, that would be really helpful, I think, for elected officials who are trying to communicate with our constituents. That's the type of stuff that would be really helpful.
No
Ms. Pegg, the second question I have for you is, recently the governor announced $400 million for a Main Street relief program that was open up to all small businesses, I believe less than $20 million gross. So I may be off that. You know, that is, in my opinion, a real step forward and a really important move that the governor made, because it seems those are, number one, they're grants, they're not loans. Number two is that it pretty much seems like geographically, it doesn't matter where you are in the state. If you apply, you're probably going to get something. So as you probably well aware, one of the things that our finance director has talked a lot about is cash flow and the importance of making sure that what's going to happen in July and October and the next January and people's ability to pay their taxes. So I guess my question to you is a program like the Main Street Relief Program, if that can help small businesses then pay their rent, their landlord, then it's more likely their landlord or the building owner will be actually able to pay their taxes, which then keeps our public safety employed, our roads maintained, et cetera. So how did you actively engage with our small business community and encourage them to apply for this? Who have you spoken to? Did you show them the website, how to apply? Because as you know, I'm sure that tomorrow night at midnight is the deadline for the pre-application. So if you could just give an update of your activities with that so important, ever important Main Street Relief Program.
Yeah, as I mentioned, once we got the details from the SBA with all the links and stuff, that went out on the social media platforms and also.
I apologize. I may cut you off. I don't think this is an SBA program. This is a program that's being administered by the DRA.
Correct, but what was good was the SBA had everything assembled for everybody, and it's because of my partnership with them. They sent that straight to me, even ahead of what I saw from the DRA. So I kind of was ahead of the curve on that. I then talked to people like Steve Dupree about this. I know Steve's been very active with his tenants, sending that out to him. I did talk to some of the downtown business owners. They knew about it. Like I mentioned, some didn't want to go for it because they still have PPP funds going, and they were concerned about there might be not being able to go for the other ones because there might be some kind of kickback of that if they'd not used all the PPP funds. They said the form was pretty easy to fill in, the ones I had talked to. So they knew about the deadlines, the one I've talked to. I mean, we've done everything we can to get it out there. We keep pushing it out on the resources center. I see what you mean, but I'm trying everything I can to make sure that I and the partners in the city, not just me, but the partners, we're doing it out. The chamber's just thrown out another webinar reminder on this as well. So I'm fully aware of the deadline. I'm fully aware of the importance, and this has been pushed out as far as we can.
Anyone else have any questions? Anyone else have any questions on the community development departments? Okay, are we ready to move on to the library? I'm sorry, Councilor Fennessy.
I was a little late on that. I apologize, Your Honor. So question I had, and I'm not sure who this is best directed to, but it's kind of a general concern that I have with respect to the budget, but the revenue we're expecting with respect to construction permits, obviously you've budgeted for a decline in those. I'm just wondering what the assumption was based on for that, and if we have properly budgeted for a decline in revenue, or should we anticipate it being lower?
So relative to the building construction, so those numbers were generated prior to the state of emergency. And what we found, historically what happens in Concord is that our construction permit revenue is largely driven by a small group of actors. Typically, it's the state and their projects were the largest drivers for years and years and years. For example, the state prison project, the women's prison several years ago, generated over $500,000 in revenue just by itself. The state has since changed their regulations. They no longer come to us for their state-owned projects. So that will have an ongoing revenue impact for the city. Then we also have the school district. That's another large generator of revenue for our building permit division. Again, if the school does a project, generates permit revenue. If they don't do a project, again, hence right now, we don't have anything on the books for the schools. That's why this revenue number is also in part the way it is. And then finally, Concord Hospital, in terms of the private sector, they are by far the largest driver. Concord Hospital over the last 2 years, they built a parking garage and they built a new medical building. So those things kept the revenue numbers inflated to a certain extent. Right now, we don't have any projects pending, any large projects from Concord Hospital. So again, that's in part why the number is where it is. Now, relative to the second half of your question, in terms of COVID, what we've seen so far is that we are still getting significant interest on the part of developers for projects. In fact, over the last 2 weeks, and even as late as this morning, I was on a call with developers planning, large developments, which for Concord would make sort of recent historical, records for us, because we have in the council, largely thanks to your direction, we've been pushing, for example, for housing. We keep saying we need more housing, construct more housing. These projects that we're talking with right now, in terms of the developers, these are housing projects, and I say housing projects in the sense of quality developments and things like that. So we're optimistic about that, and we've not seen, all indications are in terms of housing that's still moving forward pretty in a fashion that is not touched too much by COVID. The commercial side, we're still seeing some commercial developments, but those are the ones we have a little bit more angst about, just because a lot of them tend to be retail driven. And the retail world, as you know, is taking some devastating blows from this COVID phenomenon, and they were already in trouble prior to this. So we just have to make sure we keep track of that very, very closely. But alternatively, we're also still seeing some positives where, for example, at Exit 17, the Rossios are still moving forward with their plan for a market basket and a state liquor outlet. So it's mixed signals, I'd say, for the retail side. But overall, I think we're doing okay, and I'm hoping that these projections that are in the budget don't change significantly.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, don't want to cut anybody off. So with that, are we ready to move on to the library? Okay, Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, you want to be on item number 5 of your agenda. That's on page 113. Revenues budget to budget are down by $3,000 or 1.3%. That's due to a reduction in fines for overdue books. Expenses budget to budget are down $38,400 or 2.1%, mainly due to changes in wages and benefits. And we're also holding a position for the youth services manager open for the library for half the year. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. Does anybody have any questions regarding the library budget? I'll kick it off, I guess, Mr. Manager. As you know, the governor, the stay-at-home order is still in place, the emergency order is still in place, but we seem to be doing these flex openings of all sorts of different industries. As we move forward with these flex openings, one of the things that I've been asked many times now is, can the library begin a process of start doing some curbside checkout and such? And I know you had shared with, I think, most people in the council that we were looking at that and we may be able to move forward with that. Could you give us a status update of where we might be?
I think Mr. Fabian's online. Could you bring him online? There he is.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the Reopening New Hampshire Libraries Task Force, they're the ones who are working with the governor right now on libraries overall. So we're preparing to open with curbside service as soon as they approve us. But in the meantime, what we're doing is we're going to start training staff on site for curbside pickup. And what that would mean is patrons would call in by appointment only when we're open. We would open, 3 days a week to start, and we would put their items together. We would call the patrons back and let them know that the items are available. We'll set up a table outside the library. Patrons would approach the facility, and then we would check their ID and their library card, and then they would walk over, take the item, then return to their vehicle, or if they're walking or biking, leave that way. For return items, we would open the bin behind Prince Street only when we're open, so we can control the access point, and then we would empty that bin multiple times those 3 days that we're open, and we'll quarantine the items inside. There is some of the questions we've been getting on this is there is a kind of what the restaurants did, this curbside model that the governor did, the restaurants have taken advantage of. The reason that the libraries that we're not phased in yet for an opening is there's a few reasons. One of them is that the materials that they take from us, they're not consumed and they're not one-time materials. They go in people's cars and houses and all over the place, and they kind of have high potential for contamination. And the second reason is materials are then returned to us, which brings a whole other level of, outside of retail. So the plans are we're going to train staff starting next week, and then the week of June 8th, if we can go live by then by the governor, we would open curbside in this phase 1 process and start the 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings, and then kind of go from there and ramp it up and kind of see how we do. And that would just be at the Concord's main facility here on Green Street. So that's our tentative plan right now.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple questions. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was actually one of my questions, so thank you for that. My other question was whether the director thinks that the COVID situation will impact some of his projections for 2021 around people using library services, or if he thinks that it will shift maybe to be more online, or if he's planning for changes in that respect.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've already, we've kind of gone virtual. We've really changed the services we're providing. We have way more ebooks and downloadable materials than we had before. We've got our YouTube channel and social media flowing with a lot of creative programming and do-it-yourself crafts and those sort of things. So I think some of that in librarianship is here to stay, not just in Concord, but everywhere. So as we move forward, the question is what type of ratio, kind of the seesaw will we have of what virtual programming means versus physical programming. The data and the stats you're probably looking at the 2021 projected service indicators. Those were probably last compiled a month or two ago. So yeah, I would say those are going to look a little bit different, but not knowing how many days a week, we'll have physical services and when curbside will start and those sort of things, we will probably see an even larger increase in audio and ebook downloadables. And we're also doing more online programming. So you're going to start seeing more programs that we're creating that you don't have to leave your living room for. So things like that will start to affect what we do. But at the end of the day, we're still a community hub. We have over 200,000 people a year that come through the Main Street Library. So I do think that as we ramp back up, we will start to not maybe get back to normal, but we'll start to have a lot more, physical visits in some way, shape, or form, in whatever safe way that we can follow the guidelines.
Great, thank you. I know I've noticed your digital presence increase, and I know people appreciate it, and they're definitely waiting for that curbside option. Thank you.
Sure.
We have Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Fabian, has there been any reduction in your part-time, full-time staffing, or has that remained the same as it has prior to this whole thing?
Yes, we had a youth services manager position that we were about to hire, and that's one of my division heads in the library. We have frozen that position until January of next year, and we also furloughed our team of library pages, which are 7 library pages. They're the frontline, part-timers, the entry-level positions here at the library that they're certainly valuable, but a little bit more dependent on a physical library space than some of our other behind the scenes back end library staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Councilor Mattson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Fabian, you mentioned putting the materials that came back into quarantine. Can you explain what happens to them and the time frame it is before somebody else might be able to utilize those materials?
Sure. So there's a few studies out there nationally that we're waiting the return on for libraries. And one of them is how long COVID-19 can live on anything from DVDs to book jackets to paperbacks. That's been delayed until early June, but we're eagerly awaiting that. Just to be safe, we've decided to go with the national standard right now that is 7 days of quarantine. So when we take the items, we will put them in carts, with gloves and PPE, and we will take them down into probably our library auditorium for the time being, and we'll date them. And so for 7 days, no one will touch those items. They won't be checked in. No one will incur any fines. This is a fine-free world at the moment until we, get back to normal. So after 7 days, we will start to check in those items. and they will be safe to be, reshelved and available for patrons to pick up. So yeah, this is going to be quite an education piece for us, to let the public know how this works with curbside, and we'll see how long.
Follow up, Your Honor?
Please.
So if somebody, say, for whatever reason, wanted to take out some material that had just been taken out, your response would basically be it will be available within 7 days or so?
Yeah, since we're not going to check them in, the system that we utilize, it won't show as available.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be like now, if you're 7th on hold for the John Grisham, that sort of thing. So it'll say next available, it'll come to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And certainly we'll start to purchase more physical items when we get back in the building, just like we're doing ebooks. So we'll cut down on those hold lists, which we manage pretty much every week. We look at the hold list.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have you given any thought to how soon or strategies for providing internet access again? I know that there are going to be a lot of people who do not have internet access who undoubtedly will be looking for that service in order to find new employment. And so I think that as we move forward, that's going to become an increasingly critical service provided by the library. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is another interesting question. So nationally, this is a really tough one. All the libraries that we're talking to and working with, we don't have a great plan for how we can give access to those without computers. The issues are, of course, if we lend out Chromebooks or laptops or something like that, then again, they have to be quarantined coming back in. So then we have less of those. We just don't have the availability for those. The other thing we've talked about is some libraries in rural areas have tried boosting their Wi-Fi signals, on like a Saturday or certain hours of the day. Problem being in an urban environment is then you get pictures of, 150 people sitting on your lawn or out front, kind of all hours of the day sort of thing. And again, that's defeating the purpose of the social distancing. So I'm hopeful that someone's going to come up with a model out there for, this library access for those who don't have it right now. But nationally, we're struggling, I would say, in the industry right now, figuring out a way to achieve that.
Thank you, Mr. Fabian. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilor Kennison.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Fabian, under the 2021 goals, I don't see anything related to the Pennacook Library. I just wondered where we are in that process, if we'd located potential sites.
Sure. So on Pennacook, I would say that's a perpetual goal. Every time space becomes available or I'm notified of a space, we run out and take a look at it and see if it's feasible to convert into a library of any sort. Certainly what we did in the Heights, doing a pop-up library was a little bit unorthodox, but that seems to have been doing well before the virus hit. So we're kind of exploring any and all options. Certainly we know that, the building is aging by the day, but so far no physical space that's affordable or malleable enough to become a pop-up library space or a permanent library space has shown up yet. But it's something that we're still looking at as much as we can.
Anyone else? Councilor Rice-Hawkins, please.
Thanks. To the question about the internet access, it strikes me that pending what the state committee recommends for reopening phases, that we could look at how restaurants and other businesses of that nature are scheduling people out for, a 1 hour to 3 hour window of internet access. So we'd limit who is in the building, but still have some way to provide that really critical service to Concord residents.
Yeah, and Councilor, that's so that would be phase 2 for the library. So phase 1 is going to be, purely outside the building, outside the facility, no patrons in the building. But phase 2, we absolutely are looking at our colleagues nationally to figure out how we can do that, how we can, guide people into an area, give them a safe space, sanitize when they're done, give them a time limit on the computer. That is definitely going to be a priority in phase 2.
A follow-up?
Yes, please.
Would it be possible, so your scenario around, and certainly having a free Wi-Fi and a lot of people joining on the lawn, but what if we had a password protected situation where people were loaned out that laptop to sit outside and to have the password to get onto the internet access?
So I'm not sure I understand totally. So it's an open Wi-Fi right now, so there's no password required. So do you mean like kind of lease them a Chromebook for say like 2 hours to sit outside? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I'm suggesting that we would create a password protected Wi-Fi access so that you would still utilize that same type of setup that you might do during a phase 2, but you could then offer some kind of availability. And I just say this knowing that it sounds like several of us have heard communication and concerns from individuals who don't have internet access by other means and have primarily relied on the library for that in the past.
Yeah, I'm taking notes right now. So yeah, I will explore that. That's an interesting idea. You know, the wiping them down and getting them safe, you know, is going to be our difficulty in that. But if we do it, we'll do it because that would be, you know, really help some patrons out for sure.
Thank you, and thank you for all your team's doing.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? Okay, seeing no further questions on library, Mr. Manager, could we now talk about Parks and Recreation?
The next item on the agenda is number 6, Parks and Recreation. That's on page 116.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, you're crooked, then you come back straight. Sorry.
So the budget revenues overall are up $80,000, $80,300, or 6.4%. This is mainly due to an increase in the transfer from trust from cemetery maintenance of $80,000. There are also some decreases in revenues and note an increase in camp revenue of $17,500, for which we have budgeted additional funds from new programs, keeping in mind that if the new programs do not occur, we also will not have the expense associated with those programs. Expenses budget to budget are down $11,900 or 4%. This is part due to decrease in supplies, utilities, insurance, and capital outlay. We've also budgeted the expense side of the new camp revenue. And even though the overall budget is down, and if the revenue does not materialize, the expense will not either. Also holding open a labor truck driver position for the Parks and Recreation Department for half a year. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Very much. Who has questions? Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the question that I keep getting from people of my age range is, what's going on with camps? Are the camps going to open? Is the Recreation Department going to be offering the same types of camps? My understanding now is it looks like sort of the traditional recreational program may happen, but I've gotten a number of questions from constituents about sort of what I'll say the outside groups that offered camps in the past that were very popular. People want to know, are those going to happen, or if they are still on hold, when will we know whether or not they're going to happen?
Well, there's going to be a very big announcement from the governor tomorrow, based on the conversation the mayor and I had with him today. But I'd like to, maybe you could bring Mr. Gill on and he could answer what his plans are. And again, these aren't, I know these are budget questions, but they're really not budget questions. They're separate from the budget. These are operational questions related to the fiscal year 20 budget, but I think David could probably shed some light on it. And again, anything we're talking about in terms of dates and whatnot is not set in stone. It's just options that we're looking at right now. So Mr. Gill's on the line.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Great question. We get that email and calls just about every day regarding summer camps. We work with our national organization, our state organization, as well as the Governor Reopening Task Force. 2 weeks ago, the task force recommended a group of guidelines that very fortunately were similar to what we were planning already for the past month and a half. We do have just over 500 kids already registered in our summer camps. That's about 200 people less than last year, but we really haven't really advertised. Several weeks are already full, so we're ready to go as soon as the governor hopefully makes that announcement that we can do summer camps. We'll communicate with everybody and we'll get going with summer camps.
Hey, just for clarification, Mr. Manager, I'm not sure why you didn't think that was a budget question. I think summer camps have a direct impact on our revenue side of the budget, as well as our expenditures in terms of how many people we're going to employ and or not employ. So I think that's a very appropriate question. It's not just operational; that is a direct impact on the budget. So, Mr. Fennessy, thank you for asking that question. Do you have anything further, Mr. Fennessy?
Just a quick follow-up for Mr. Gill with respect to the camps that have been run traditionally by outside organizations. Do we know, are we anticipating that those are going to run this summer, or do you have any input or update on that?
The ones that we've contracted with, like basketball camp and soccer camp right now, they're in our summer brochure. We are taking registrations. It all depends on what those final guidelines are from the governor regarding what we can and cannot do. The great thing about the new community center in Keach Park is we have great indoor space, but we even have great outdoor space with the soccer fields, tennis courts, and basketball courts. So a lot of the social distance things that will probably be recommended and part of policy. I think we can do really well here. It's just waiting for that final guideline 2.0 summer camps, and then we'll implement it and see what we can do.
Okay. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. Actually, Councilor Fennessy asked the questions that I had, but I do have just one more, and that's related to pools. And I didn't know if the manager had any sense of when the city might be in a position to make decisions about pools this summer.
Yes, I'm thinking probably we'll have an answer by Monday. Right now, it looks like, based on the number of lifeguards that could potentially be available, it'll be dramatic. If we were able to do anything at all, it'd be dramatically reduced from what we typically do. But based on the information that we're seeing, I would say probably by Monday we should have a good answer about what we're going to do. I should to bring up the question. We've planned on canceling fireworks. We've canceled fireworks for the year, just so you know. So that question doesn't need to be asked. So pools we'll know Monday, and I think we're meeting Monday, so we'll be able to provide that information on Monday too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gill, is it fair to say that the lack of revenue is pretty much going to be offset by the lack of compensation because those programs won't be provided? Is it almost a wash?
Yeah, that is correct. Most of all the programs except for our senior program, we do charge fees, and they do cover all the direct costs plus a little extra, especially the ones indoors. We're paying off the utilities and stuff. So if the programs do not happen, we will have a corresponding reduction in expenses.
Great. Thank you.
Councilor Russell.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify with the city, when you said firework, I know at our previous meeting, we said maybe fireworks later in the year, if not in July. So we're not going to do them at all. It can be removed from the budget.
That would be a council decision. I'm just saying there's no fireworks for July 4th.
Okay, thank you.
If the council wants to leave, I suggest leaving the dollars there, but that's the council prerogative.
Thank you. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is probably directed more towards Mr. Gill, but if we are going to proceed with camps and pools, assuming some level of service, how has the hiring process gone, and do we have any concerns about what level of service we're going to be able to provide based on our ability to attract quality candidates?
That's a great question. Summer camp counselors are all ready to go. The staff has done a good job. We have a number of staff returning, and then we've already interviewed a lot of new ones. So I think it's just getting the clarification from the governor regarding, what summer camps looks like, and then we're ready to start making job offers, tomorrow or Monday if he makes the announcement, and we can live with the rules and regulations, so to speak. Lifeguards is a different challenge. Lifeguard classes hasn't been going on for the past 3 or 4 months. We have a smaller pool, so that is definitely a different challenge than camp counselors.
That's it. Councilor Hatfield?
Thank you. I was wondering if either the city manager or Mr. Gill had seen the comments of Mr. Schweiker relative to restarting senior programs, and if so, if you could respond to his comments related to the need to restart those programs to the extent that they can be done safely.
Yes, I have. I had a chance to read them. The question's a great one. We're just getting now ready to reopen the community center the week of June 8th, similar to what the library is doing, by appointment only, limited hours to try to get registrations and forms coming in. The senior program will probably have more information once we can figure out if we can do summer camps. Right now, the guidance is not to mix seniors and kids and people in and out of the building. So we're just going to wait. I do believe by August, as things start opening up, the senior program will come back. The whole group of them are already playing pickleball every day. His point about meals and the walking program is we have several hundred seniors who use the building every week, and that's duly noted.
Thank you.
Councilor Rice Hawkins, do you have another question? Okay. I don't have anybody else's hand raised. Anybody else? Councilor Hatfield alluded to it, but I wanted to state at the end of this section, I was going to state it again in the next section, but I'll just do it once, that the council has received an email from Mr. Schweiker on both the library and the recreation budget. All those have been distributed to you through the assistant city manager, so you should have those all. If you don't have them, just let us know and we'll get those to you. So, seeing no more further questions regarding park and recreation, Mr. Manager, could you move on to human services, please?
So you'll want to be on section 7. That's page 119. Revenues budget to budget are flat. Expenses budget to budget are up $22,000 or 3.2%. And that is an increase mainly due to wages. Also included in this budget is a program change request that was approved to increase the hours for administrative specialist position. We've been working very closely with the Human Services Director on all the issues regarding people seeking service and the difficulties finding shelter or hotel space. Any expense directly related to COVID, we will be seeking reimbursement from available state funds. And based on the projected expenses for fiscal year 20, I think we'll be okay. And for the 21 also. However, these things can change quickly, and we'll always work to make sure we take care to help those in need, and if necessary, tap into contingency dollars. As you know, there's contingency dollars the city council carries in the budget, and the council budgets every year for that. There's money this year, there's money next year, and I'll be glad to keep you updated as developments occur with this, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there any question for the manager? Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. This may be a more appropriate question for the Human Services Director. I'm wondering if the department is anticipating any new challenges or exacerbated situations going into the next fiscal year related to the current.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, Council. Byron Chaplin, yes, I think that what we're anticipating is the eviction. So that's what our main concern is going to be, and how to be able to handle all of the situations that we're going to be anticipating, and also with disconnects. We have not seen an increase yet in reference to rental assistance or requests during this time. And I think that that's in due to the unemployment benefits that some individuals are receiving. My main concern is going to be mortgages and also the evictions, and how we can be able to see an uptake in that.
Follow up, Your Honor?
Please.
Karen, do you think that we might see any loosening or any additional opportunities to temporarily house people who have been evicted in local hotels as hotels start to try to reopen?
I think that that might be a challenge, because as soon as the hotels are able to open to regular business, I think that that's when they'll have less availability. Also, if there are any activities during the summer, that also decreases our ability to have openings. So that would be one of the another concerns that I would have, of where to be able to house individuals once hotels start opening.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next I have is Councilor Fennessy.
Mr. Mayor, my question pertains to, I see we have the increase with respect to compensation. And so my question is, do we have sufficient staffing to handle what I anticipate is going to be an increase of demand for services?
Well, we do have a very small office. I think that with the increase in hours for the administrative assistants, it's going to be helpful. But that is one of the issues that we might be facing. Will we be able to have enough? I have 3 full-time caseworkers and myself, and that could be a challenge that we would have to face when we get there. And just trying to really be proactive in making sure that the individuals that are, if they're under eviction, we always done a really great job of prioritizing, and we'll have to be able to continue with that. But I think that not until we're there that we'll actually know what we can or not have at this point in time. But that's another concern that we do have to see about staffing and how we can be able to manage. But I think it's really about collaboration with our partners in the community. That's going to be helpful also in this, and partnering and seeing what the resources that they have as what we have in trying to come together to help the most global populations that we have.
What's that? Okay. Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. A question for the manager. Where can you point me to where I would find the detail under the expense items? The last one is miscellaneous.
That would be, I could list those off for you, or you could go to the detail budget. Do you want me to list them off? Read them out?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you.
Ryan, do you have that?
And actually, I have a question for the director, if while you're getting that, if that's okay. I was wondering if the moratorium on evictions is reducing our expenses in the current fiscal year for helping folks with rent and mortgage payments.
That is correct. It has decreased it by quite a bit, even if when I look at the numbers from pre-COVID last year, from March to now, we've seen at least a $18,000 decrease compared to this time around. What we've seen is an increase in motel assistance. So last year during this time period, we assisted about $1,700 with hotels, versus this same time period, and it's been about $13,000 that we've helped out in motels in this time.
Thank you.
Okay, so the item that Councilor Hatfield's referring to in the budget is the miscellaneous item, or the one that says $228,750. Is that am I in the right line?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that is made up of the following pieces. There's $18,000 for burial costs. Some of the councilors who've been on the council for a while will recall There used to be a large share paid for by the state and some paid for by the city. And during the last recession, the state downshifted all those costs to the communities. This is true for every community. So there's $18,000 for burials. There's $7,000 for general relief. So that'd be for utilities and food, non-food items. There's by far the largest is mortgage payments and rental relief or rental assistance. That's $200,000. And there's also $2,000 for prescription assistance. So people who come to us who might need assistance with filling their prescriptions, we help with that. And there's also $1,750 for transportation if folks need money to be able to get around to go to appointments or whatnot. So if you put all of those together, it's $228,750.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you mind if I ask one last question, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
I think in the notes, in note 4 on page 120, you helpfully talk about some temporary changes in procedures allowing people to email and phone in requests and use fillable forms. And I was wondering if you were considering continuing some of those practices as appropriate as we come out of the COVID crisis, and if you see that as a way to improve efficiency for the staff.
Yes, we do have plans to continue that where appropriate. It also has been very difficult, that process, as you can imagine. For some, the email doesn't work, even if we have Adobe. So we've actually had to go and be on the phone with some of our clients, and that's at least a 10-page application. So it becomes cumbersome. And also that we have to work with verifications, and getting those verifications sometimes can be challenging if they can't take a picture and send it to us. So those are some of the challenges, but we do plan to continue to do this when appropriate. And especially as we're opening for phase 1, that's something that we will continue to do. And then we will continue to evaluate this as we move forward.
Thank you. And just know that we really appreciate all of the extra effort that you and your staff are putting in at this time.
Thank you.
Council Keach.
I'll pass. I'm sorry. I got a question on the next one. I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions regarding human services? Okay. Seeing none, that takes us to our tax increment financing, cap budget. Is that correct, Mr. Manager? Is that what your scorecard has?
That is correct. So
Okay.
At that point, I'd like to bring Mr. Walsh on. You're on, Matt.
I'm just getting promoted to being a panelist. Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to start on 157 and discuss the tax increment finance districts and then move on to the capital budget?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good. Members of the council, you want to be on page 157. Just generally speaking, the city has 3 tax increment finance districts. They total approximately 7 acres. We have created about $98 million since the most recent district or oldest district was created in 1998. $98 million of net new assessed value. That $98 million was created by a total of investment of about $53 million, of which $17 million were TIF supported funds. The rest of it came from grants, general fund, water, sewer impact fees, things like that. On page 159, you'll find the North End Opportunity Corridor Tax Increment Finance District. It was enacted in 1998. It could be terminated at any time. However, we've been holding it open for the future construction of Store Street North, which we'll talk about under the capital budget tonight. The sunset date, if that were to happen, with that street project would be somewhere around fiscal 2040. But that's subject to a lot of variables, including whatever the cost of that project is, additional infrastructure that might be developed in the district, or new growth and assessed value in the district. Since 1998, we've created $51 million of net new assessed value. Since 2005, the city's been releasing a portion of that $51 million of assessed value and the taxes associated therewith to support the city's general fund, school district, county, and state of New Hampshire. In fiscal 21, we'll be releasing about $33.5 million of assessed value, which will be about $950,000 in tax revenue. That's about 66% of all the tax revenue that's going to be generated in the district. After that release, the district will have revenues about $494,000, expenditures of just under $245,000, and a net operating income of $250,000. The fund balance for 2020 is projected to be about $1.9 million, and for fiscal 21, we're projecting a fund balance of about $2.16 million. Would you like me to continue for all three of them, Your Honor, or stop after each one?
I think it's easiest to probably do all three.
Yes, sir. The next one is the Sears Block TIF District. It's on page 161 of the budget. It was enacted in 2003, originally to support the development of the Capitol Commons project. The current sunset date is 2039, but could potentially be expedited to 2032, subject to no additional investments in the district by the city. Currently, we have $43 million of new assessed value that's been created since 2003. Revenues in 21 will be $1,233,900. Expenditures will be $1,231,445, with a net operating income of basically $2,400. Significant transfers to the general fund and parking fund from this district to support a variety of expenditures. To the general fund, we transfer $454,000. The lion's share of that goes to debt service for the Main Street project from a few years ago. Contributions from the general fund to the Store Street parking garage project, as well as support of the downtown services team. Transfers to the parking fund will actually increase in fiscal 21 to $316,000. Primarily, that is transfers to the parking fund are for operating and debt service costs associated with the Store Street parking garage. Moving on, the final TIF district is on page 163, is the Pennacook Village Tax Increment Finance District. It was established in 2010 to support cleanup and redevelopment of the former Allied Leather Tannery site. Its projected sunset date currently is 2035, but could be potentially expedited to as early as 2027 if no additional investments are made by the TIF district. It's created $4.2 million of assessed value since it was created. Revenues for fiscal 21 are $149,735. Expenditures will be $58,000. We have a net operating income projected of $91,640. Has a fund balance of $144,000 currently and projected for fiscal 20, and that will grow to $236,000 by the end of fiscal 21. Be happy to answer any questions, Your Honor, about TIF districts.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the overall explanation. Who has questions? First question I have is Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walsh, I'm curious, you're projecting an increase in revenue for the Sears Block TIF, and it's the only one of the three that projects an increase. I'm wondering, it's a two-part question. A, I'm wondering what the basis is for that optimistic view. And the second is that you're also anticipating $8,000 in interest income for this TIF, which is the same as the 2020 budget. But again, this is the only TIF district where you anticipate a stable investment income. And I wonder whether that's realistic. So thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councilor. The minor increase from 2020 to 2021, actually 2020 budget property tax revenues were about 1.13 million. We're budgeting 1.225 million. That's largely the increase in revenue. That's based on figures that are produced by the assessing department, and so that's what we use to determine what we think the property tax revenues will be. Relative to interest income, you could very well be correct. And if we take for example, if you look back in 2018, our investment income was about $2,000. We may end up at a level like that. However, the fund balance in the district is approximately $500,000. So if we do end up seeing a reduction in our interest income, we can certainly absorb that.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Walsh, in the Sears Block TIF, I suspect that if I go back and find the detail, I would see snow removal and those types of things in the expenses related to downtown. Are all those expenses that are incurred in downtown, whether it be pressure washing the sidewalks or sealing and repairs to downtown, are those paid for from this TIF?
Counselor, they are not. So there is the geography of the Sears Block TIF district basically begins at Depot Street on the north end and continues south on South Main Street to Theater Street, and generally goes between Main Street and Store Street. So the contribution to the downtown services team is about $40,000 a year, and it is to support their activities within that specific geography. We are obligated, we can only spend TIF district monies within the district itself. So that's why it's done that way.
So I would find the expenses for downtown under the general services budget.
You would find a transfer out in the TIF district, and I believe there's probably shows a transfer in from the TIF district in the downtown services budget. And I think Mr. LeBrun is nodding his head if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't see anyone else have any questions. Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. I believe that takes us to our CIP this evening.
Very good, Your Honor. Would you like me to attempt to share the screen to show individual program areas in the capital budget?
I think that was a request of Councilor Kennison.
Okay, we will give it a shot, and if this is not helpful, let me know and we'll stop. It's not that one.
And again, we're doing this by project by category for those following along.
Correct, Your Honor. Can you see that? Let me see here.
Yeah.
Here we go. How's that?
We got it.
Okay. I believe you can also, on your individual screens, there's a plus and minus on the left-hand side that I think if you need to zoom in here or zoom out, you can do that, I think, on your individual screens. So with that, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the capital budget, and then I'll dive into it by program area. It starts in the budget on page 207. It's capital improvement project area by category. You'll notice that some projects in the capital budget have an asterisk next to the dollar amount. That means they are not included in the appropriation for the fiscal 21 budget. Typically, we hold back certain projects because with the asterisk because they are dependent on outside funding sources such as grants or donations. In some cases, they might be projects supported by tax increment finance districts. In those cases, there's special appropriation procedures we must follow due to the state law RSA 162K. So those aren't included. And then this year, we held back some projects because of the fiscal uncertainty created by the COVID-19 pandemic. So some of the projects that we're going to talk about tonight are restricted for that reason. Overall, the fiscal 21 budget includes 50 projects totaling $25.3 million. However, 14 of those projects are restricted, and that's going to be holding back about $14.5 million. So the net capital improvement program looking to be appropriated during the budget process is about $10,844,504. Of that total, about $5.26 million is general fund bond. However, after restricted projects, only about $3.5 million of general fund bond would be appropriated by this capital improvement program as part of the budget process. I would also note that that figure of $10,844,000 includes $978,000 of closeout monies. These are monies from past capital projects that have been completed, and we are carrying the money forward to be reappropriated as part of the budget for projects in fiscal 21. Overall, the 10-year capital improvement program all years is about $335 million. That is up from $312 million in 2020. With that, Your Honor, I'm going to move on to airport, which is the first category you can see on the screen. I'm going to scroll down here. The first project, the only project, is actually CIP 75, which is general airport repairs. $22,000 for replacement of a ramp at the terminal building known as the T1 ramp, which provides ADA access from the terminal to the adjacent tarmac. And that is the category, Your Honor. I'll take any questions that the council may have about airport.
Anyone have any questions about airport? And I apologize. Wow, okay, there you are. Any questions regarding airport? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Walsh, so I think we're moving on to Arena.
Arena, okay, we'll keep going back and forth, seeing if this works. So scrolling down, it's at the bottom of page 209. It's project 64. There's only one project for Arena. $505,000 in fiscal 21, all Arena supported bonds. $215,000 of that is to replace two compressors, which go back to the 1960s, that are associated with production of ice at the arena. $195,000 for roof repairs, basically to replace the roof on the north and south sides of the building, and $95,000 for boiler improvements. And that is the category, Your Honor. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, is there any questions regarding Arena, item number 60, CIP project number 64? Okay, seeing none, bridges.
Scrolling on, Your Honor, there are, I believe, a total of 3 projects in bridges. Starts on page 210 of the budget. Approximately $850,000. The first one you see on the screen is CIP 518, which is bridge and dam maintenance. The city owns approximately 20 bridges. We're proposing $75,000 in highway reserve funds to pressure wash 3 bridges, essentially to remove salt and other contaminants to help prolong their longevity. It's the Loudon Road Bridge over the Merrimack River, the Loudon Road Bridge over Store Street, and then the Manchester Street Bridge over the Merrimack River. Moving on, next project is CIP 602, which is the Ironworks Road Bridge Replacement Project, $35,000 again in general highway reserve funds. This is to make improvements to the bridge on Ironworks Road, I believe over the Turkey River. Interim repairs to try and get it through to when it needs a major repair in fiscal 26 that you'll see in the out years. That's highway reserve money. And then the final bridge project, Your Honor, is project 603, which is the Washington Street Bridge replacement project. This was covered by the manager a little bit in his opening budget remarks. A little under $740,000 to replace, to make some repairs to the Washington Street Bridge over the Canal Inlet, which is over near Electric Avenue and Millstream Lane. This is following up on funds that were appropriated in fiscal 20 for design, which were $220,000. Unfortunately, the project is not eligible for the state bridge aid program, largely because this is a repair and the bridge aid program is not accepting new applications because it is over tapped at the moment. And with that, Your Honor, I'll be happy to take any questions about bridges.
Okay, anyone have any questions regarding bridges? We do. Council Fennessy.
Just clarification, because you kind of shorted out on that last part, Mr. Walsh. What was the reason that it didn't qualify for state funds, the Washington Street Bridge?
It's basically the timing of the project counselor and the fact that the state bridge aid program is not accepting any new applications because it's essentially oversubscribed at the moment. They're years behind in trying to get other projects done, and they're swamped.
Thank you.
Councilor Hatfield?
Yes, following up on that, would it be possible to wait on that project, or is there a need to move forward with it in 21 and 22 as shown?
The manager raised his hand, so I'll defer to him.
So I asked exactly the same question, and for safety purposes, we wouldn't be able to wait long enough for monies to become available to undertake the work. So we decided to move forward. As much as I don't want to and prefer to get some state money if we could, it's just not feasible at this time. And it will be so long into the future that it would end up having to close the bridge.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. We're moving on to cemeteries, please.
Cemeteries, Your Honor. The category starts at page 210 on the bottom. There's only one project in fiscal 21. It is $50,000 to replace a metal storage building at Blossom Hill Cemetery on North State Street. The building's extremely tired. We have asterished this project because of fiscal uncertainty associated with COVID-19. It would be nice to get the building replaced. At the same time, it's been functioning for us for a while, and if we had to get through another year, we probably could. And that is the category, Your Honor. Happy to answer any questions.
Who has questions regarding that project?
Linda.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Council Kenson.
Mainly it's a comment. Blossom Hill Cemetery has become a very popular walking place for people during this social distancing. And I just want to say that that cemetery is in absolute perfect condition. I mean, always mowed, it looks good. And I really appreciate that. And I'm sure many other people do as well. There's one thing that I did notice up there. There's, couldn't tell you exactly where it is, but there's a whole chunk of pavement that is crumbled. It's kind of a deep hole. If anyone accidentally drove over that, they probably would lose a tire.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and the other cemetery that I visit frequently is Woodlawn, and again, perfect condition. And when I've encountered city staff working up there, they're very friendly. They wave, and
thank God.
Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Council Hatfield.
Thank you. Just a question in terms of the breakdown of the different cemeteries. Would I be able to find that in the budget detail document that we received?
Mm-hmm.
Like the
You would,
spending?
Counselor, yes. If you looked at the CIP detail for Project 587, you will be able to see all the plans for each individual cemetery for the next 10 years.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Just Mr. Walsh. So the metal building, what does it actually store?
I believe it's equipment and supplies, Your Honor, but I would have to defer to Dave Gill for something more specific.
So if we didn't have that, where are they going to store the other stuff?
I would defer to Mr. Gill.
That's all right. Council Hatfield, do you still have a question? Oh, he disappeared. Okay. All right. With that, any further questions on cemeteries? How about community planning implementation?
So, Your Honor, I probably won't share the screen for that one. There are no projects programmed for that category in fiscal 21. Be happy to answer any questions, though.
Okay. Any questions on this one? Okay. Seeing none. Downtown, please.
So, moving on to downtown, Your Honor, there are one project in fiscal 2021. It is on page 212. It is $25,000 for CIP 579, which is downtown squares. Those funds, which are city general fund bonds, will be used to make minor concrete repairs to the concrete steps and the Eagle Square Amphitheater. That is the only project in the category for 21. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, seeing no questions, then we can move on to fire vehicles.
Fire vehicles, Your Honor. There's one project in fiscal 21. It is CIP 4. It is also on page 212. In fiscal 21, there is $696,331 proposed for replacement of engine 4. Engine 4 was the current engine 4, I should say, was put in service in 2014. It currently has about 76,000 miles on it. What will happen is that piece of equipment, which we generally try to keep in a frontline status for about 8 years, will be moved to the reserve fleet, and we'll replace a 2002 engine with about 163,000 miles. We'll try to get another 8 years out of that engine 4 while it's in reserve. That is the category. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions on fire vehicles? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Walsh, golf, please.
Golf also starts at the bottom of 212, Your Honor. There are two projects in the budget for fiscal 21 being proposed. Actually, you'll have to scroll on to 213. The first one is CIP 235, which is golf course grounds improvements. You'll see there's $270,000 that is being recommended. 195 of that is general fund money bonds. The remaining 75 is golf fund. Both are been restricted because we don't know what the fiscal condition of the golf course or the general fund will be to be able to support that. Essentially, the funds are being used for the following purposes. $200,000 for irrigation improvements at holes 10, 17, and 18. $60,000 for bunker replacements at the 2nd and 18th holes. $10,000 for forward tee box renovations at the 15th hole. Moving on, 530, which is golf course equipment. Again, this is restricted $60,000, all golf supported bonds. $30,000 to replace a 1980 bed knife grinder and reel grinder, as well as $30,000 to replace an aerator, which is used in turf maintenance. And that is the category, Your Honor.
Okay. Any questions around golf? Council Cohen's not here, so I guess everything's quiet. Okay, then we'll move on to general services vehicles, please.
We're sticking to page, I believe it's 213. You'll see project 121 on the screen. This is the only project in the category. It's vehicles and equipment replacement in the general services department. This year we are requesting $1,066,000, which is essentially $800,000 in general fund bonds and $266,000 in water fund bonds. This is an increase from 2020, which was $985,000 all in. This year we are looking to purchase 3 6-wheel dump trucks. All of them are 2006 vintage. We typically keep these for about 15 years. One of them is being bought with the water fund. That's $580,000 for those 3 trucks combined. $155,000 for the replacement of a 2004 backhoe. And then the remaining $331,000 is for an assortment of smaller vehicles and equipment, such as follows. Essentially $50,000 for 2 trailers for hauling equipment, $50,000 for a vibratory roller, which is used to compact soil, $125,000 for 3 pickup trucks, $30,000 for a welder, and then $76,000 for 2 vehicles that are used in water fund operations. Happy to answer any questions, Your Honor.
Okay. And who has questions on general service vehicles? Councilor Keach does. Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. So when those vehicles are recessed and presumably sold, where does that end up in the budget? Where do I see that as income?
I'm going to have to defer to Mr. LeBrun.
What we typically do is we have a miscellaneous revenue line in our usually either the finance budget or in the general services budget. And when we make those sales, that we credit that money to those miscellaneous revenue lines. So the whatever it gets sold and we credit it back as revenue.
Are you looking to buy a backhoe or?
I need a dump truck and a backhoe. Yes. So, but I'm just curious about where that shows up because there's some income there, obviously, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Any further question?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Hatfield.
Well,
I was wondering, just given the budget uncertainty, if any of those purchases would be asterished, if you will.
We have asterished some purchases, Counselor, but I think what will also happen is you'll see all the departments that have capital projects manage their budgets and working with, obviously, the city manager and Mr. LeBrun. And if fiscal conditions warrant after July 1st that we're worried about the ability to support some of these purchases, we would hold back. And that would include the water fund. And I would defer to the manager who's raising his hand.
So a lot of the equipment when we order these, whether it's a fire engine or some of the larger pieces of equipment, have a very long lead time in terms of actually acquiring them and getting them ready on the street. So that's one thing. We try to get out in front of that. The other part of this is we've been able to keep staff at a minimum, because the staff is expensive, in fleet by making sure we stay on a regular vehicle replacement program. And if you start to fall behind on that too much, what happens is you have to make additional repairs. We'll have breakdowns. You miss snow removal routes. You miss sidewalk plowing routes. So what we've found, it's better to buy the equipment and stay on. This was one of the items that I brought up last year, in that we needed to get back into the $1 million range. We had skinnied this down, so to speak, for a number of years to save dollars. But now we have to get back into replacing these. Out of the $266,000 does come from the water fund, which can afford it. So it's really the $800,000 that affects the general fund. And remember, these are bonds, so you would actually start paying the principal and interest on this next year, not this year.
Thank you very much. Councilor Kennison, you had your hand.
Thank you. This is a question for the manager. In talking about the vehicle replacement program, which makes good solid sense, I note that replacing 3 six-wheeler trucks at one time, how does it come about that we're replacing 3 at once?
Oh, actually, I think if Mr. Chesley's on the line, he could actually probably talk a little bit about the actual fleet itself. 3 is a very small number, relatively speaking, in terms of the whole fleet. And I think he could give you a ad nauseum discussion on the number of vehicles we have. But no, I'll let him touch, because he's a repository of knowledge regarding the vehicles. So Chip, would you mind?
Sure thing. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Well, first of all, the 6-wheel dump truck is basically the workhorse for our winter operations. That is the key component for us to effectively remove snow. In this particular instance, one of them is going to be purchased through the water fund, as Tom previously mentioned. One of the things that we measure ourselves is to make sure our vehicles are operationally ready at the beginning of each and every snow event. And as Tom had mentioned previously, in previous years, we had skinnied down some of those investments in this fund. And for those counselors who were able to take the tour of our facilities when you came on board, I think some of them may have seen some of the 6-wheelers that we wanted to replace, that you could literally see holes through them due to rust. So we definitely get our money's worth out of them. 15 years for a 6-wheel dump truck is a fully depreciated piece of equipment. As to how many of those are in play during a snowstorm, probably upwards about 15 to 20. Why 3 this year? We purchased some. Actually, there is some benefit to purchase all vehicles in one particular year, one model year, because then you become familiar with that particular truck, because they do change somewhat over a period of time. So be happy to discuss it any further if you wish.
Ms. Cassidy, up for the question? You're all set? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, Mr. Walsh, if we could move on to information technology. Mr. Walsh? Paging Mr. Walsh.
Guys.
Bueller?
I am here. Yes, sorry. I was talking to myself. We'll try this again. It begins on page 213, Your Honor. The first one is CIP2, Information Technology and Hardware Software Replacement. $268,000 is proposed for next year. This is up from $251,000 in the previous year. There's a funding formula that goes into that, which if folks have questions, we can talk about. Essentially, the fiscal 21 targets are as follows. We're going to replace approximately 175 desktops and laptops. We generally keep those for 5 years now. We are going to replace 10 mobile apparatus tough books, which are special laptops that are used by the fire department and their apparatus. 10 legacy internet switches, which is approximately 15% of all the switches the city uses to run our networks. We'll keep those for about 5 to 7 years. Security cameras, there will be 10 to 15 cameras that are replaced. We try to keep cameras for about 5 years, but they do start to fail within 2 to 3, depending on where they're located. We're going to replace approximately 6 to 10 large volume printers. We've been trying to get away from individual printers to drive people to using copiers. iPads for the general services for remote field activities will be replaced. There's a supply of those, 40 computer monitors. And you'll probably see this budget grow over time. As you can see on the screen there, generally is pretty constant for now. But as we go to more mobile technology, that will be reflected in CIP2. Turning the page to 14, to page 214, you'll see 130, which is multi-function photocopy machines. We have 24 of them in the organization. We generally keep them 5 to 7 years. We actually purchase them. There's $8,000 next year, which is general fund cash, which is capital transfer, to replace one copier that is located in the finance department collections division. Moving on, you'll also see below that page project 297, which is Geographic Information Services, commonly known as GIS. This is their computer mapping for tax maps and water lines and sewer lines and drain lines, all that stuff. There's $10,500 next year split between water, sewer, and general fund, basically to update those data layers. You'll recall that we've been doing a lot of work on our tax maps over the last really 5, 6, 7 years. I'm happy to report that that project is coming to a close, and we only have about 1,400 parcels left that need to be updated in our entire database. The city has over 15,000 parcels, so that's pretty good. And those 1,400 parcels are located in the southwest corner of the city near Bow and Hopkinton. Happy to take any questions on the category.
Thank you very much. And who has questions? Councilor Keach, do you have a question? Councilor Keach?
No. I'm set.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can take your hand down. Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. Question with respect to copiers. What are we still using copiers for? I'm hoping you're going to tell me scanning and not making more paper.
We do a lot of scanning, so they have that capability. We do still do copies as well, but yes, we do a lot of converting the PDF and trying to store that way electronically, but we still do occasionally make copies.
Mr. Manager?
There's part of these are printers, but I think also you might want to, there's not, if you think about the 50 plus committees that you have, we do not supply all of them with iPads or any other type of electronic equipment. So if you go to most committee meetings, they're still working on paper. We still have to print notices on paper and put them around. So there's still a purpose for it. If you go down to the clerk's office, there's a lot of paper that goes in and out of there required because of the elections and vital records and whatnot. So there's still places where it does take place, but there is a lot more is electronic now, and the machines that purchasing have been able to buy are a lot better now at scanning, and so a lot of the work that legal does, for example, most of that is scanned now versus any type of printing that goes on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Walsh, about intersections.
Yes, Your Honor. So intersections, let me just scroll down to it. Begins on page 215, I believe here. There is basically 2 projects in the category for fiscal 21 at this time. The first one is CIP 34, which is the North Main Street and Store Street intersection. $370,000, $200,000 of which is bonds. The balance is impact fees from all 4 impact fee districts, by the way, transportation impact fee districts. We have the ability to do that because of the geographic location of that intersection being within 1 mile of all the other boundaries of the district. So that's why it was done that way. Those funds are restricted because we are, this is tied to CIP 18, which is Store Street North, which we'll get to in a few minutes here. So that's the first project. The second project is 283, about $38,000, mix of bonds and closeout funds for routine maintenance of our traffic signals. Next year, we'll be focusing on underground wiring and replacement of signal heads at the North Main Street at Ferry Street and Washington Street intersection. So that's those 2 intersections, which almost function as one, will be targeted for next year. And that is the category, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Who has questions regarding intersections? Okay.
This is Councilor Knight. I have a question, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Mr. Walsh, I believe last year in CIP project number 31, we had moved up design dollars to look at the West Street and Key Square intersection. I see that's pushed out till next year. Is that just a reflection of the current economy, or what was the decision behind moving that back out?
I believe, Counselor, that is just a reflection of where we're at with the economy and also the ability for managing workload.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, how about other vehicles?
Other vehicles, Your Honor. Let me just scroll down. It's at the very bottom of page 216. There's one project in there. It's actually at the top of 217. It's 575, which is police vehicle and equipment replacement. You'll see $330,000 requested, which is up from last year. $180,000 for replacement of 4 cruisers. Generally, we get 3 years out of a cruiser in frontline and before it's recycled to the unmarked fleet, and we try and keep it for another 2 to 3 years. There's a lot of wear and tear that cruisers go through. You'll also notice that as we buy new equipment over time, you'll see us transitioning probably more to SUVs as the U.S. automakers are generally moving away from sedans, especially Ford. So first comment there. And then secondly, there's $150,000 for replacement of the evidence van. And that is the category, Your Honor.
Thank you. Other vehicles? Okay, seeing now, how about parking?
Parking, Your Honor, same page, 217. Essentially, all the projects in parking have been restricted for fiscal 21 at this time because of uncertainty relative to revenues due to COVID-19. Obviously, with the amount of economic activity that's been disrupted in downtown, that's directly impacting parking revenues. That said, I'll start off with CIP 432, which is the State Street Garage. This garage, which opened in 1980, is our oldest garage. It's 82,000 square feet, has 238 parking spaces. We have tentatively programmed $350,000 for monies to design improvements to that garage. It needs a wholesale repair and refurbishment similar to what we're doing at the School Street parking garage right now. But that is restricted, and we would only move forward if the parking fund had the ability to afford to move forward as we get out of the COVID situation. Moving on to the next page, the next one is 595, which is parking meters. It's page 218. $850,000, which essentially is $820,000 as a bond, and the rest is closeout money to replace all 85 kiosk pay stations that we have, of which 69 of them are on street. The rest of them are in the garages or at the Fayette Street parking lot. Combined, those manage approximately 906 spaces, of which 441 are on street. The kiosks first went into service in August 2010, so they are now a decade old. And they have processed more than 5.2 million transactions in their lifetime to date. We also propose to replace the remaining 270 mechanical meters, single space meters that with the new smart meters. In total, we had 408 single space meters. We've replaced 140 of them using leftover funds from recent meter expansion. We still have to replace another 270. The parking committee has been looking at various options for replacement of kiosks. There's been some discussion about potentially not having kiosks on certain streets downtown. That conversation is ongoing. There's also various permutations that could be examined relative to fully replacing the kiosks with completely new machines, or really removing the electronic components and keeping the housings, which would save the city significant dollars, approximately half, give or take, of what that would take. So half of 650,000, that remains ongoing. Parking committee had a meeting on Tuesday night, which the council should be aware of, during which they made it very clear that replacement of kiosks and single space meters is very important. And there was a motion made that if it's necessary to consider suspending CIP 529, which is the Store Street parking garage, which was a fiscal 2020 project, and using the dollars from that for that project, which have already been appropriated and bonded, to move forward with meter replacement and kiosk replacement. That would require an action of the city council, and we'd have to confer with the bond council on that. I wanted to make you aware of it, but it's a priority for the parking committee and frankly for city administration as well. The last project I have in the category, Your Honor, is CIP 627, which is the parking strategic plan. $30,000, again, asterished, and that would be really for changing signage in the School Street and potentially Store Street garage if we are successful in negotiating from our current lease system to a permit system in those two facilities. And that is the category, Your Honor. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Who has questions? Councilman Warren.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. I had a question, just a general question about the kiosk, and if there's a sense or analysis of how the performance of our kiosks as a whole have compared to similar or the same technology, same company perhaps, in other communities. I think we've all experienced ourselves occasional and perhaps sometimes more than occasional frustration with the kiosks, and certainly have heard that from constituents. But I'm wondering how, again, the performance of our technology that's been installed compares with other communities that have the same technology, and if that analysis has been done.
Can't hear you, Matt.
Talking to myself again, I apologize. Counselor, there hasn't been a formal analysis, but I can tell you that the type of kiosk that the city currently uses is all used by Portsmouth, Manchester, and Nashua. So they use it, and I also believe Lebanon, Hanover, where Dartmouth is, uses the same kiosk, if I'm not mistaken. We've all had similar experiences, and obviously as the technology gets older, the machines become less reliable. They're basically computers, and once you have a computer that's 10 years old, it's not going to be as reliable as it was. That said, they have processed 5.2 million transactions and brought in millions of dollars over the last decade. I would also note that the city went out with an RFP for kiosks last spring, and we selected 2 vendors. We tested both of them. That technology tested very well. We had a good experience with both vendors. So we're very cognizant of trying to buy the most reliable, most intuitive, user-friendly piece of technology that we can to manage our parking system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kretovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walsh, when it comes to the cash dollars, coins that is collected in the parking machines, given that it's been pretty well established by WHO that COVID-19 does linger on coins and dollar bills, are we doing what we can to protect our currency collector, and how are we cleaning our money, so to speak?
We're aware of that. A lot of our transactions have become credit card and online through the mobile pay app. We are cleaning the machines routinely if people have to touch them. Our staff is using the appropriate protective equipment as they're emptying the personal protective equipment as they're emptying into the canisters and processing the money. Gloves, masks, that sorts of thing. So we're doing what we reasonably can, recognizing that they have to be in contact with paper money and coin.
Any other questions regarding parking? Okay, I had one question, Mr. Walsh. So unfortunately, I was not able to make the parking committee on Tuesday. And as you know, when you look at the detail of the various projects, and specifically with the CIP 529 regarding the Store Street parking garage, the $850,000 that was, I guess, apparently recommended to potentially repurpose. If you go to the budget detail, you know as well as I that it doesn't show what we approved last year. It starts with the current 2021. So perhaps you could remind the council what you're asking to forego in CIP 529 to advance the meter project.
We need your microphone, Matt.
Apologies. 529 is the Store Street parking garage. It's the garage next to Red River Theater. There was $1,060,000 that was approved by the city council in fiscal 20. And in fact, that bond was sold in January. So we will start incurring that bond payment beginning in July. And so there was a thought of, since the money has already been appropriated and sold.
I'm sorry, let me get the question just so you don't have to repeat what you said. I can't look at the budget detail and see specifically what that money was appropriated for.
Sure.
So tell me, if I have to go in my other room and look at my old budget book and I pull that out and I look at project 529, what am I going to see that you are suggesting we don't do to move it to elsewhere?
So 529 was basically for replacement of all waterproofing, caulking, sealants, and membrane in the garage. Lighting improvements, including replacing the lighting system with LED and adding supplemental lighting for some of the dark corners of the garages. Repainting structural steel that's in the stair towers because it's starting to rust. We don't want it to rot. Making certain elevator improvements to hopefully make the elevator more reliable in cold weather. Construction of a maintenance room with water, similar to what we're putting in the School Street garage to improve maintenance capabilities. Things of that nature, Your Honor.
So what I'm hearing is you looking at safety issues like lighting, things that we promised the public, as well as things which will prolong the life of a very expensive investment we made in the community. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, you're hearing lighting improvements, which do have a public safety component, and you're hearing preventative maintenance to make sure we don't have more severe repairs in the future. So yes, that's a fair statement.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Does anybody have anything on parking? Okay, seeing that, let's move on to parks and open space, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. Could I just ask one quick question?
Yep, didn't see you. Sorry. Yep.
No, sorry, I'm late. The meter replacement that the parking committee feels so strongly about for those single meters, and you refer to them as mechanical. What are the payment options for those right now?
So for the mechanical meters that we have, the old mechanical meters, you can only use coin. You may also use the pay by phone app. There's a sticker on the side of those meters that tells you how to do that. For the new meters, you're allowed to use coin. You can use a credit card or debit card, as well as the mobile pay app.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fennessy, you had your hand up.
I did. I just wanted to make just a quick comment in relation to the meeting that we had 2 nights ago. I'm not sure that I would say that the parking committee was strongly in favor of moving forward with this. I think we certainly had a very lively discussion. It did not get a unanimous recommendation from the committee, and certainly I did not support the motion. So just so everybody knows, it is certainly not a unanimous recommendation from the parking committee.
Thank you for that clarification. Council Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. But it was a lively discussion. Mr. Walsh, how would you assess the current fiscal state of the Store Street garage? Is it obviously the maintenance that was bonded was considered to be important, but is the building in imminent danger of collapse?
Councilor Champlin, no. It's in overall good condition. There's certain things that would be nice to accomplish that we need to accomplish in the not too distant future. Part of that conversation is also taking the residual amount of money to put it into lighting and some of the more urgent waterproofing items that we need to deal with to address those concerns. It wasn't meant to put it off forever. It was meant to put it off for a period of 12 months, maybe 24 months, but certainly not forever.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Council Kenson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to say I made the motion to do this because I thought it deserved council consideration and discussion. There are a whole lot of issues around the parking meters, and one of them was a suggestion to use the meters on Store Street, remove those, bring them downtown or some of the side streets to replace those meters. So there's a whole lot to be discussed about what we're going to do about meter situations. And also, right now, I'm not clear of what we have put aside to replace meters, regardless of whether or not we use that $750,000. So there's a lot of issues. It was my purpose to get it up for further discussion on what we're going to do about meters in general.
I'm guessing we'll be discussing this further. Just a guess. Okay, seeing no one else having their hands raised, I guess that moves us on to Parks and Open Space, please.
All right, Parks and Open Space, Your Honor. It begins on the page, bottom of 218. There are 3 projects, approximately $1.655 million. First one is CIP 51, $265,000, all general fund bonds, asterished because of fiscal condition uncertainty. $230,000 for improvements to the maintenance shop at White Park, primarily related to air quality and lighting improvements. Another $35,000 for replacement of the hockey rink dasher boards, which I believe were used when they were first provided to the city over 15 years ago. CIP 52, which is Keach Park, which is also asterished, general fund bonds, $40,000. That is to replace an irrigation pump, which has been acting up as of late. Moving on to page 220, let me try and get there for you. The last project is CIP 567. This is the Pennacook Riverfront Park, $1,350,000, all asterished. $75,000 from recreational impact fees, and $1,275,000 that would be tax increment finance district supported bonds from the Pennacook Village TIF district. This is for the design, permitting, and construction of the new riverfront park at the former Allied Leather Tannery property. This is something that's been on the city's radar since we got involved in the Allied Leather Tannery project in 2002, and was a goal of the 2004 charrette that we had for that project. It would include reconstruction and expansion of the Canal Street parking lot from 28 to approximately 55 spaces. With the parking lot, the entire site is approximately 2 acres and has 500 feet of frontage on the Kentucky River. This is not part of the budget appropriation request. It's asterished, which means we would come back at some point in fiscal 21 to seek these funds to move forward because of special voting requirements and public hearing requirements under the TIF statute in New Hampshire. And that is the category, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anybody have any questions? We do have questions. Councilor Fennessy.
Just a quick question, Mr. Walsh. So when you say that the Riverfront Park would be financed by other tax increment financing, am I to understand that that would be a specific bond that would be paid through funds in the from the tax increment financing district?
You're correct, Councilor Fennessy. Yes, there would be bonds that would be issued by the city and they would be supported by tax revenues generated in the Pennacook Village Tax Increment Finance District.
Thank you.
Councilor Hatfield.
Thank you. I missed what the second smaller project was at White Park. Do you mind repeating that?
Sure. It was $35,000 to replace the dasher boards at the hockey rink that are at the park.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up.
Please.
For the maintenance shop, you said air quality and lighting projects, has staff investigated whether we could tap into energy efficiency funds, possibly through Unitil, to help finance those improvements?
That is something we'll definitely look at. We have done that for the Citywide Community Center as well as the, I believe, White Park Skate House. So that's part of our standard operating procedure. We'll look.
So if we were successful, it would reduce the cost to the city.
Correct. And if we knew that at the time we came forward for those funds because they're restricted, we would adjust the budget accordingly.
Thank you.
Appropriation.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Manager. Let's see if you're still paying attention. So the White Park maintenance shop is beneath what we used to be using the building for, the old Park and Recs department, correct? What's going on in the upstairs? In other words, I guess the crux of my question is, before we go make a tremendous amount of investment in this building, what's the overall condition of the building? What are we using it for? What do you see as the future of that building?
Well, that's why I'm hesitant to do the work right now. The only thing that brings it up on the scale here is the potential health issues related to the air quality. So before we go and invest some dollars in it, I want to look and see what's really necessary to do here. But I think it's important to have it on your radar because we do a lot of small engine repair work here for Park and Recreation. We had looked at one time, I think you might remember when we were doing the new community center, about doing a facility there to see if we could make one work. It was just too costly as part of the overall project cost. So that's half the answer. The other half of the answer is we have to look at a generalized city facilities use plan. As you know, we're looking at all the facilities now and trying to get a handle on maintenance costs and what we're going to need going forward. So that'll be part of that too.
Okay, I guess that's my reluctance is that, A, is this the best place for a maintenance shop? I understand that when we were doing the projects at the new Citywide Community Center, I understand that it was too expensive and that made sense at the time. But before we start investing a whole lot of money in something that maybe on its last leg, I'd rather be wise about how we're spending these dollars. So I appreciate that it's part of the overall package.
And this is, as you're pointing out, this is really just the basement of that building. So there's another whole purpose that building can be put towards if we decide we want to reuse it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions regarding that? Seeing that, okay. So that takes us to public buildings, please.
So yes, Your Honor, it starts on page 221, I believe. There are 4 projects for $1.525 million. The first one is CIP 63, which is citywide recreational improvements. $860,000 is requested. Again, all general fund bonds, restricted because of the COVID-19 fiscal uncertainty. $550,000 for replacement of Merrill Park pool, and $300,000 for renovations of the West Street Ward House, primarily roof repairs, including structural repairs, new underlayment, Installation of a new synthetic slate roof, which will look historically correct, but is significantly cheaper than slate. Chimney modifications related thereto, and lead paint abatement at soffits. The next project is CIP 65, which is City Hall, $90,000 bonds. Again, $65,000 for replacement of 2 rooftop HVAC units that are used by the city auditorium, and $25,000 for HVAC improvements and IT server room. The next project is CIP 323, which is the Conf. Total of $445,000. There's a split there between the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer. General fund takes 50%, water and sewer combined are the remaining 50%. Essentially $300,000 for the design and permitting for replacement of the fuel farm at the Conf, which is our fuel station for the fleet and other departments. $80,000 for overhead door replacement. This is the first phase of 3. Ultimately, we'll replace all 57 overhead doors at the facility, which are now over 30 years old, and $65,000 for repairs to the salt shed. The final project is CIP 551, which is the library maintenance, $130,000 to renovate the restrooms at the Green Street facility. Again, asterished because of the COVID-19 situation. And that is the category, Your Honor. Happy to take any questions.
Who has questions for Mr. Walsh on public buildings? Ms. Manager, I guess I have a question similar to the last one I did regarding the building at the White Park. In terms of West Street Ward House, I mean, obviously I understand it's a historic building. I understand it's important cultural significance to this community. My question ultimately is, other than voting, does it get a significant amount of use? And I'm trying to cruise through really quickly. Number 63 in the project detail. Are we going to be investing a whole lot more money into the building, or is this going to shore it up pretty well for a while?
So the series of questions is go back several years. The city council had a complete discussion on all city-owned properties and buildings. That was one that the city council, after taking public input, decided they wanted to keep and wanted to reinvest in, knowing though that it would, to keep it historically correct, it was going to be very expensive going down the line. So you're right. If you look at the public building section for that, this is just the beginning of a whole series of costs for the West Street Ward House. We do run a lot of recreational programming out of there. You remember at one time, a whole series of particularly seniors wanted to be able to continue to operate in that part of the city for programs. So Park and Rec does run programs there. So it is not just voting, and it does have other possibilities, but as you know, it's very limited. It doesn't really have any parking available to it. There's very little other property around it. So it is something, though, that the council has decided in the past officially that it wants to maintain forever. And but you could always revisit that, which is why it's again asterisk here, because I think when we come back, you really should talk about, if the dollars are going to be put towards this, what type of renovation standards you want to hold it to, and is the investment of all that money really still a community value going forward over the next 50 years, 100 years. So you're gonna have a real shot at it when the time comes, if the money does become available.
I guess you kind of hit the heart of my question. I mean, you're looking at quickly next year. We're looking at $135,000 investment. And that's just next year, and for flooring and such like that. And I don't expect an answer to this question, but and again, I fully recognize you were absolutely right that this was a council decision to continue to invest in this property, and I still would probably support that. But my question is, are we getting the most use out of it we can? Out of the 5 days a week, we've talked about 1 day, 2 days. I mean, how much use to get out of it? But ultimately, this is my question: is this the safest, most efficient, effective place for voting to take place in the future? And what I'm specifically getting at is when we're facing September primary and November election of this year, and there's significant unknowns when you're dealing with COVID-19 virus, will we be able to meet the standards perhaps necessary that we're going to find with distancing, with the number of people in the building at one time? It seems like a very small location, and it's not the only location that's small. I mean, the golf course, Beaver Meadow Golf Course, is small. The churches tend to be fairly small that we use, but I'm concerned not only the investment of this building, but the overall use going forward, particularly when we're facing issues that we're going to have in September and November.
Well, the quick answer to those serious questions is it's used 7 days a week, so it does get a lot of use, and we just made some investments in it on the floor so they can continue to use it as a voting place. But I think you're absolutely right. As the community continues to grow, eventually, in my discussions with the city clerk, that building will no longer meet the minimum standards forget about COVID, meet the minimum standards for space and availability of booths and activity that goes in there for even having elections. So when you get to that point, you're going to have to find another location. The difficulty is if you now you add the COVID situation into there with appropriate spacing, you have an issue. But if you think about the number of facilities that we use related to schools and other places for activity, are those going to be viable locations going forward into the next 10 years, 20 years? That's a big question out there too. So, you would think, okay, you can go right down the street to a school district and maybe use a school for voting. I don't know if that's the case, if that is really the case. And if you didn't have that and you didn't have this building, what are your options then for Ward 7? So maybe you can start combining properties or buildings or I should say wards to vote in similar places. I think that's something we have to take a look at going forward as the community continues to grow.
All right, thank you. Not seeing any other questions. I believe that moves us on to public safety.
Public safety, Your Honor. Let me just get there. So public safety begins on 2/22. There are 8 projects for about $671,000. Running through them quickly. CIP 252, which is fire station improvements, $60,000 for a station location and master plan study for the city's 4 fire stations. The 4 stations were built between 1966 and 1984 and totaled approximately 50,000 square feet. Issues that they've been experiencing, including the growing size of apparatus and the physical space limitations of these older facilities. It's causing the fire department to actually order customized fire apparatus in order to fit inside of our garages. Customization is problematic because it's more expensive, and there's a sense that it might reduce the reliability of some of the equipment because of customization. Also continued population growth in the city, but also East Concord population growth has been discussed for some years now. And it will build upon, these studies will build upon the data that's being collected right now as part of the citywide facility needs assessment project of all city buildings, which General Services Department is running as we speak. Next project is CIP 368, which is police department communications equipment, $210,000 to purchase. It's a 2-phase project. It's going to be replacing all the mobile radios, handheld mobile radios used by the police department personnel. Phase 1 is 60 radios, 50 that are going to be used by uniformed police officers and 10 that are used by parking enforcement staff. So that's why there's parking funds that are included in that. Moving on, the next project is CIP 370, ballistic vest replacement, general fund bonds. We replace ballistic vests for all of our police officers every 5 years, which is the industry standard and recommendation. Following that is 376, which is $110,000 of general fund bonds. It's basically to replace heavy lift airbag extrication equipment that's used by the fire department, as well as 1 set of jaws of life. After that, it's $50,000 for police station improvements, general fund bonds. This is to make physical improvements to the booking area and holding area in the police department in order to improve the ergonomics of working there, but also safety for all parties that are involved in that space. Moving on from there is TIP 561, which I'll just scroll down to. Fire alarm infrastructure replacement, $76,714. This is to continue implementation of a new radio master box system, which replaces traditional hardwired fire alarm systems throughout the city. CIP 573, which is fire department personal protective equipment, $50,000 of general fund capital transfer. $25,000 will be used for routine replacement of turnout gear for the fire department. It's their jackets, helmets, respirators, things of that nature. 10 sets of gear will be purchased. Another $25,000 for replacement of their active shooter personal protective equipment. And then the last project, the CIP 621, which is at the bottom. Actually, forgive me, Your Honor, I misspoke. I confused two projects. Backing up, 484 is actually a police department needs assessment and master plan, similar to what we're doing with the fire stations. I apologize for the oversight. It's basically to look at the existing facility, its capabilities, including if it can be vertically expanded to serve the police department. And we'll be using the data that's being collected as part of the citywide needs assessment for that. CIP 621, which is the final project in the category, is $40,000 for improvements in the booking room that I mentioned before. So I apologize for that confusion. Be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on public safety? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to sewer collection.
So sewer collection begins on page 225. There's two projects. The first one is $40,000. This is for basically maintenance of sewer line interceptor roads and access roadways. The city has 141 miles of sewer line in the city. And so this would be maintaining the access roads that's generally located near Langley Parkway and Memorial Field. It's a two-phase project. It's been asterisked just in case the sewer fund has any financial issues due to COVID. This is a capital transfer, so it's cash. CIP 275, which is sewer pump and station improvements. We have 8 sewer pump stations throughout the city. $630,692, of which $600,000 and change will be used to reconstruct the Hannah Dustin pump station, including standby generator, and then $30,000 for standby generator replacement, which will be funded by the Mountain Green Sewer Reserve Fund. And that is the category, Your Honor.
Much. Anybody have any questions? We do. Council Fennessy.
I actually want to ask a question. I didn't get it in before we moved categories. So if you will indulge me.
No, I'm sorry. Time's up. Sure. Oh, go on.
So this is just a question, and I'm not sure who it's best to, but in looking through the 10-year, we had the studies for both the police and the fire stations, but I don't see any money built in down the road for potential improvements. And I'm just wondering, if we're not anticipating that these studies are going to result in some additional capital improvements, do we need to necessarily do them now?
Mr. Manager?
Sure. Well, that's in essence the purpose of the study, is to identify those needs going forward. We're at the point where we can keep spending money as it comes up on an annual basis as problems crop up. But we decided that it'd be best to step back, do the study, and make those improvements. Is that what you're asking, or is it more of, so for example, fire department is, I think the question is going to be, are those stations that we currently have adequate going forward? I think the answer is going to be no. And then the question is from there, can you retrofit them, or do you have to build new? Police department, I think everybody that I've talked to is of the mind that that building is not built as a police department, or shouldn't have been built as a police department. You're going to need a completely new facility, which will probably cost you, pick a number, $12 million down the line. But in the meantime, what do you do to keep that going? Because that's a big project.
So my question was, if that's what we're anticipating is going to be happening as a result of the study, should we be starting to see in 2028, 2029, 2030 some money allocated towards that?
Towards those projects?
Yes.
Yes. So if you go to public buildings, you'll see a new central fire station. For example, in 2027 for $14 million. And we had talked about a police station, and the mayor's brought this up in the past several times. And what you see here is a 10-year capital plan. When we think out a capital plan, we actually think out about 20 years. And so just off of this, we're anticipating the police station coming forward. So whether 2031, 2032, but one of the things the council has not wanted to do is drop eight-figure projects into the budget when they really don't have the desire actually to go forward and do any of those immediately right now. So I could easily drop in 2030, again, a $12 or $20 million police station. But then people just look at that and say, well, you're simply just inflating the budget. And it would just keep sliding as every year goes out because there's no plan to move it forward yet. So we could always add something like that if that's a good idea, but it's so far away that it's really just out there, paper out there.
Councilor Credit.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a clarification, Councilor Fennessy, we're not allocating money in future years. We're just budgeting. So that study is going to tell us what those costs are going to be, and they'll wind up in a budget. We only look at budgeting and allocating in the current year. That's all.
Thank you.
Just a clarity. I don't want someone to be scared that we're going to allocate $12 million 9 years from now. We're not.
It'll be probably more like 14 million, right?
But in the old days when we were collecting impact fees, it was best to have those projects sitting out there. Okay. Any questions regarding sewer collection, by the way? Okay. That takes us to sewer treatment, please.
Yes, Your Honor. So it begins on the bottom of page 225. Relates to 26 that has the first project. Two of them total. First one is CIP 104, which is Hall Street Wastewater Treatment Plant. That facility was built in 1981. It does an average about 4.5 million gallons of sewage a day, but has a capacity for 10 million. $1,025,000 in sewer fund supported bonds are requested for the following projects. $635,000 for electrical improvements, including replacement of a 35 kilovolt switch and 3 transformers. $150,000 for scum processing equipment. $125,000 for study of the potential implementation of an incinerator for our sludge. $100,000 for screw pump bearing replacements, and $15,000 for primary clarifier scum pump valve replacement and valve drains. The next project is 466, which is the Pennacook Wastewater Treatment Plant. That facility went into service in 1974. There were major upgrades done in 2005. Currently processes about 450,000 gallons a day, but has a capacity for 1.3 million. 30% of that volume comes from the town of Bosquen. There's 55,000 requested in sewer bonds for various improvements to the security fence that protects the facility, and that is the category, Your Honor.
Are there any questions? Council Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walsh, I tried to parse this out looking at the detail, and I could not. Are any of these improvements driven by the state's more stringent PFS regulations?
I'm not aware of that, but I would defer to Mr. Chesley, who handles that more directly.
We'll bring Chip in here.
There we go.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
The one item would be in Hall Street is the $150,000 that is recommended to study the feasibility of an incinerator. And that is driven by PFAS. Simply put, there are really three basic strategies that you can use to handle the solids that a wastewater treatment plant generates. One is you can encapsulate it in a landfill. Two, you can beneficially reuse it for agricultural purposes. Or three, you can incinerate it. With the new stringent PFAS regulations here in New Hampshire, it places beneficial reuse as a strategy, a long-term strategy, in serious jeopardy. Then ultimately you take a look at, do you bury this material, or do you incinerate it, and by incinerating it, destroy the PFAS constituents and reduce the volume that ultimately has to be buried. So PFAS as a emerging issue in the wastewater industry is going to cause a paradigm shift for everybody. And we're trying to get ahead of it and take a look at what options are available to us here in Concord.
Thanks very much. I was wondering if that might be the case. Thank you, Mr. Chesley. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Chesley, don't go away. This is a hot topic. Council Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the city of Concord is not the owner of the only owner of the Hall Street plant, if I'm correct, is there any regional impact on this from, say, the town of Bow, I believe, is a partial owner of the plant? And should they be chipping in for this? Any improvements, or is it somehow allocated?
The city of Concord owns the Hall Street wastewater treatment plant. The city of Concord and the town of Bow have an intermunicipal agreement which deals with allocations regarding capital and operations.
So just to follow up, would Bow be responsible for any of this capital if we were to spend it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Council Mattson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Actually, I had wanted to piggyback on that because I was talking about the Pennacook plant with Boscawen being involved. So I assume that the answer, if they're involved with it as well, that we have a collection from them.
Yes, there's also an municipal agreement between the city of Concord and the town of Boscawen, which allocates capital and operation expenses. And the city of Concord owns the Pennacook wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you. Follow up, Your Honor?
Please.
I'm curious, you mentioned incineration with PFAS. Wheelabrator, is that an option in terms of incineration, or would we have to talk about doing something of our own? Don't they still have an incinerator process, or am I off track?
Wheelabrator has an incinerator in Pennacook. It operates. It's principally used to incinerate solid waste, principally from New Hampshire, as I understand it.
Okay.
From that, they generate electricity. As to is that particular technology located in Wheelabrator receptive to wastewater sludge? I don't know. Wastewater sludge is basically 75% water. If you think of the waste that we collect in your house, it's certainly not 75% water. So I'm speculating they would need to make, if it is feasible at all, they would need to make certain changes to their plan.
I guess I'm just looking at whether or not we would be looking at building a incineration specifically for it, or if there are other ways to adapt. But thank you.
Okay, I have no one else's hands up. Anybody else want to ask about sewer treatment? Okay, that takes us to sidewalks and streetscapes.
What was
I think
that?
the city manager
wants
had a
to say
question.
something.
Did you really though? Did you really want to say that? You know what? You're on mute. You can stay on mute.
I think you have me in a block that's off the screen. Is that?
I do.
I want to say, I'll keep it
You
real
didn't have your hand up.
No, I didn't. You're right. I want to say is there's a reason that there's an increase, a proposed increase in the wastewater fund. It's the PFAS and it's these capital improvements because the plant's 40 years old. Put them together. That's what's driving the request for the increase. And I'm done.
Isn't it also the disposal cost now though?
Well, that's part of the PFAS piece.
No, I'm saying to you, it's not just capital projects. It's also the operating of the actual disposal.
Well, am I on? Yes. Our contract is going up, but we thought we'd be able to manage that with through the fund itself because it was very, very healthy at one point. Now, because of the PFAS situation, it's going to become not so healthy.
Okay.
So I would prefer to come in with zero for that this year, but we just can't.
Hey, me too.
We went up to Wheel of Freighter. They really didn't have it.
Okay, seeing none. So are we ready for
Sidewalks
and streetscapes?
Yes, Your Honor. I won't switch screens. There's no projects recommended in that category for this year. The category is on page 226 of the budget.
Great. Excellent. Excellent.
That plan.
Anybody want to talk about sidewalk streetscapes?
Just driving on the pilot program up there. I was not really close to it, but I don't think it worked out.
I think we're still listening to Mr. Chesley.
Yeah, you may want to go on mute there, Mr. Chesley. Okay, so seeing none with sidewalks and streetscapes, how about solid waste management, please?
Same situation, Your Honor, for that category. It's on page 227. There are no projects in fiscal 21 that are being proposed.
Okay. Anyone solid waste? Okay, how about storm sewer?
I can go back to sharing the screen. There are two projects that are being recommended. It starts on page 227 of the budget. You'll see $450,000 for project 83, which is additional funds for the Alder Creek culvert or Alder Creek Drive culvert over Beaver Meadow Brook to finish design and permitting as well as construction. This supplements money that was in the fiscal 21 budget. We would note that we have about 31 miles of drain line throughout the city as well. There's a map on page 305 that shows this location if anybody's unfamiliar. And then the next project is CIP 571, which is the IA 393 Horseshoe Pond Drainage Improvement. I'm very pleased to report that Mr. Cedarholm in City Engineering and his team has completed phase one of this project, which involved dealing with drainage from I-393 and Booton Street and routing it down through Kimball Jenkins. That project was substantially completed earlier this spring and is performing as it was intended, which is excellent. In the addition, should additional work be required, these funds are being held in the budget as an restricted project, which would be paid for by the state. And essentially what we've done is so far we have routed drainage through Kimball Jenkins to essentially near the Pan Am Railroad tracks to an area that can receive it and has been functioning well since that was completed early in the spring. The additional drainage work, if it's required, would basically continue piping it across more or less near the Friendly Kitchen over to the vicinity of Higgins and Hebert Street by U-Haul and Stickney Avenue. And building a new retention basin to receive additional water if that becomes required. But right now, it looks like phase one is acting as it should and no additional funds are being included in the budget at this time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on storm sewer? Okay, not seeing anyone. We'll move on to street corridor improvements.
There are no projects in that category, Your Honor. Happy to take any questions, though.
Anybody have any questions regarding street corridor? Okay, seeing none, take it to street rehabilitation, please.
There's only one project in that category, Your Honor, so I'll keep it on the screen. There's the annual highway program, which is CIP 78. First of all, I would note that there are maps on page 298 to 301 of the budget that denote where we plan on doing road work as part of the fiscal 21 budget. $2,212,000 is being requested for fiscal 21. This is an increase over 2020, which was at by approximately $200,000. I would also note that spending for this project has increased by approximately $736,000 since 2017. So reflective of the council's goal to spend more money on the annual paving program. The city has approximately 220 miles of roadway we maintain and 107 miles of sidewalk. There is $1,887,000 proposed for maintenance overlays or reclamation projects as follows: Allison Street full length, Chase Street full length, Clinton Street, Princeton to South Spring, Cornell full length, Cypress full length, Dartmouth full length, Harvard full length, Morton also full length, North Spring Street full length, Noyes full length, Princeton Street full length, Rumford, Pleasant Street to Albin Street, Springfield Street full length, Yale Street full length. Those are all maintenance overlays. Reclaim, which is when we actually go in and grind up the road and regrade it, and compact it, and pave a new street. That's being proposed for Bishop's Gate, Joffrey, Knoll Street, Martin Street. All of those are full length. Pennacook Street between Rumford to Albin, and then Wiggins Street, which is full length. There's $200,000 for pavement preservation, which is a fancy term for crack sealing citywide. $100,000 for drainage repairs associated with the scope of work for 2021, and $25,000 for emergency overlays. And that is the project, Your Honor.
Thank you much. Any questions? Council 9, you happy with your streets? Okay.
I was, yes, absolutely. Ron. Thank you for asking.
I bet you are. Councilor Hatfield.
So a newbie question maybe, when a street is on one of like the Rumford, Martin, Pennacook, does that include striping of those streets when they're redone?
City manager's waving his hand.
Yes, it does. So so it's all that work, and if there's any sidewalks associated with any of those streets, it's repairs to those sidewalks.
But you only stripe one side then, right?
1 year, and then the next year we do the other.
Sorry, it's getting late. I'm just losing it here.
Or 3 side.
There you go. All right. Any other street rehab? Okay, good. That takes us to street new construction.
New construction, Your Honor, it's on 259. I'm going to keep it on the screen here, if that's okay. There's only one project, and that is CIP 18, which is Store Street North. This would essentially extend Store Street from where it curves back into North Main near the Holiday Inn on up to South Commercial and Constitution Avenue. It is located in the North End Opportunity Corridor TIF District. The total cost is $9.3 million. It is an restricted project, so it's not being appropriated as part of your budget process right now. Essentially, if this project is to go forward, it would be supported entirely by TIF bonds. That $9.3 million is for full design, permitting, construction. It basically breaks down this way: $650,000 for permitting and design. There was money carried in the fiscal 20 budget, which was also restricted, so no confusion there. Just to clarify that, so $650,000 in 21 for design and permitting, $645,000 for railroad improvements, $600,000 for a new 8-inch water main, which would go between Store Street to South Commercial and Constitution, $450,000 for a new 12-inch sewer main in the same location, and then essentially $6,955,000 for roadway construction and related improvements. This project dovetails with CIP 34, which we discussed earlier tonight, which is the Store Street, North Main Street intersection, which was $370,000 separate from this project. Again, this is restricted because it is going to be supported by the TIF district if it happens. So it requires a special public hearing and voting process as mandated by New Hampshire RSA 162K. City administration intends to bring this forward pending conclusion of negotiations with a couple of parties that have been we've been discussing various issues with for about a year. And if we can conclude those negotiations, we'll come forward sometime in early 21 with the required TIF amendments and appropriation resolutions for the council to consider. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. The good counselor from Ward 2, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a newbie question. Was there ever any talk of creating a TIF for just the Store Street project and not have it tag on to the Opportunity Corridor?
So Counselor, there's been discussion, that concept has been raised in the past. And rather than creating a new TIF district, it seemed more expedient to keep the existing district open to allow for this project to happen. The road's been contemplated since at least 1997. It showed up in the 1997 Downtown Master Plan. So we've been talking about this for 23 years or so. As part of keeping the Neok TIF district open, planning for this, we have been releasing a lot of assessed value out of there to support the taxpayers. So there we can do that. And we are attempting to make sure that we can more or less maintain that release of funds when this project goes forward. So that's something we're looking at, and there'll be a fiscal analysis presented to you. The problem with creating a new TIF for this specific project would be we need to make sure that there's going to be new development that's going to come along to help pay for it. And although there might spur new development in the future in the Stickney Avenue area, Stickney Avenue is not part of the TIF district right now. We don't know when or if that would happen. So there's no dedicated revenue stream that would materialize to pay for the roadway if a new TIF was created. Hence the reason why we're working with the existing Neok TIF district.
Okay, thank you. That was a good explanation.
You're welcome.
Councilor Fennessy.
Mr. Mayor, I want to acknowledge we got some testimony from Roy Schweiker on this issue, and I want to raise one of the points that he identified, which was what impact is the I-93 expansion going to have, or potential expansion, on our timing of this project?
So this is something that we've been speaking with the New Hampshire DOT about. We feel it actually could benefit the 93 project, especially as it relates to access to Stickney Avenue. Stickney Avenue might be rerouted to come in from Constitution Avenue and South Commercial Street, believe it or not. Obviously we won't go forward if we have concerns that 93 would cause major issues with our proposed project. But as it stands right now, the state of New Hampshire is aware of what we're doing, appears to be supportive of it, and I don't anticipate any conflict. And I don't know if the manager has anything to add to that. Mr. Manager?
So if you go back a little bit, the last time 93 was in the state's capital budget before this time, it was planned, construction was planned to start for the widening in 2006 and be completed in 2008. And at that time, we were looking at the improvements and thought that we could dovetail them in together, either make it one project or actually have the federal government, the state government help pay for this. Then when that project got, and many other ones got removed from the state highway plan, that project is now 10 years away. So the I-93 plan. So if you want to, the option is wait 10 years or plus, well, actually longer than that, for the I-93 project to come along, and then try to do something with that in essence. Or you could drive yourself and say, okay, we're going to address the needs in Concord for this. One of the things we looked at was also how can we as a city, and this was done through the, Councilor Todd was, I think, chair of the committee, and Councilor Kretovic was heavily involved with this. When we did the 2020 plan, the Vision 2020 plan, how can we reduce the impact of 93 on the environmental part of the city along the river? And that was, if we did not build the Store Street connection, you would end up definitively with an 8-lane highway out there. But if you did do the Store Street piece, you could, it shouldn't have to be anything more than a 6-lane highway. So that's why one of the reasons the council wanted to move forward with the project is it would make a better federal project as part of the 93 project, but also when the word came that that project 93 boat through Concord was going to be removed from the state plan, and it was not even in the plan, and now it has come into the plan, but it's 10 years away. Nobody wanted to wait at best 10 years to be able to do something to start redeveloping the Stickney Avenue area and make that connection to reduce traffic particularly through sections of North Main Street.
Quick follow-up.
Yes, please.
So would it be accurate to say that the city feels confident that we can do our piece and it will not be adversely impacted by whatever the state may end up doing at some point with 93?
I'm confident we can do our piece, and if the state and the federal government want to do something, they're going to have to make sure they take care of our project. I'm 100% sure that we're not going to come in and get run over without our project being addressed or our needs being addressed. That's not the way we've been operating with the state or the federal government. So I think getting out in front is actually an advantage, because we'll be able to drive this a little bit versus sitting in the back and waiting for the state or the feds to actually tell us what they want us to do. They've had plenty of opportunities. I think it's time for the city to move forward. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Hapton.
Thanks. Just a quick question about Langley Parkway. It shows up in 2024 and 2026. I was wondering, is that a change or has it been in those years previously?
It was delayed by administration a little bit, partly because of what's been going on, partly because of there's a partnership that's envisioned there with Concord Hospital that would be discussed more, partly because of fiscal condition of COVID. So all those reasons, it's been pushed out a little bit.
What's that? Okay. I don't have anybody else. Last shot, anybody? Okay. We then take up water distribution system, please.
We're nearing the end, Your Honor. Page 230, there's 3 projects for water distribution. The first one, CIP 85, which is water main replacement. City has approximately 177 miles of water line that we're responsible for maintaining. Some of that line goes back to the 1890s. There's $798,000 in change, water bonds and closeout funds in 2021 being proposed for design and construction of water main replacement in Joffrey Street, as well as sleeving approximately 800 feet of water main that's in Wiggins Street. Joffrey and Wiggins are both part of the annual highway program for fiscal 21 and CIP 78. There's a map on page 310 if you're curious where those streets are. CIP 244 is water meter replacement program. It's $100,000 of water capital transfer. It will replace approximately 500 water meters throughout the water system. Last project is CIP 451 leak detection equipment, $10,000 in water bonds. This is really to update our data logging equipment and software that we use to listen to the water mains to determine if they're leaking. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Councilor Hapton.
Sorry, my hand was still up from the last one.
Okay. Anyone else? See none? Okay. Mr. Walsh, it takes us to water treatment.
Water treatment, Your Honor, yes, it's the final category. Page 231, there are, I believe, 4 projects. First one is CIP 88, which is water main, water plant improvements. There's $255,000 being requested, $5,000 in water capital transfer, really to buy a snow blower for the skid steer that we use to maintain the facility up there. It's skid steer loader, which is a Bobcat, which was purchased last year. And then $250,000 in bonds to renovate the former pump station 4 structure into a maintenance shop for the water plant. The water plant maintenance shop is currently in a basement level. It's not ideal for doing, for maintaining our infrastructure. So we'd be doing structural and architectural renovations to the former pump station 4 structure to make it suitable for a maintenance shop. Second project is CIP 114, which is the Pennacook Lake Dam and Spillway. It's $175,000 for water bonds, basically to conduct a forensic investigation of the dam and design any repairs that are needed for the Pennacook Lake Dam. CIP 124 is the water system SCADA improvements. SCADA is an acronym which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition Software. Essentially, the software helps us operate the plant and monitor plant operations. $30,000 for equipment and software upgrades. This is a routine item that's in the budget almost every year. The last project of the night is CIP 321, which is the Water System Master Plan implementation. It's $50,000 that's being requested next year to implement Part 3 of the 2006 to 2010 Water Master Plan. Phase 3 of the master plan deals with the distribution system, so water mains that deliver water to houses and commercial buildings, and storage of water, which are the tank structures that are throughout the city. We update the water master plan every 10 years or so. We updated the supply portion of it in 2016. And we looked at the treatment processes in 2009. That does not need to be updated, hence our reason we are asking for funds to update phase 3, which is distribution. And that is the category in capital budget, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions regarding water treatment? Okay, seeing none, I guess that concludes the CIP portion of tonight's meeting. In fact, that concludes all the items that we were about to take up. So does anybody else have anything before we move on? Councilor Credit.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a reminder to the council that the city manager's evaluations are due on Sunday, May 31st. And many thanks to those that have already completed them. Just a quick reminder so that we can move our process along. And thanks for your time and attention.
Thank you. Appreciate the reminder. Anyone else? Okay. I would entertain, well, before I do that, I'll just remind us, everyone, that we'll be meeting on Monday, June 1st, 5:30 for special revenue funds, which include project inspection, parking, airport, conservation property, golf course, arena, solid waste, as well as the enterprise funds of water and wastewater. That is all for lots of fun on Monday at the 1st at 5:30. With that, seeing no
Adjourn.
I think we have a motion to adjourn. It has been properly seconded. And Ms. LeBrun, could you call the roll, please?
Councilor Bouchard,
Yes.
Mayor Boulay,
Absolutely.
Councilor Champlin,
Right on.
Councilor Fennessy,
Yes.
Councilor Grady Sexton. Councilor Grady Sexton. No.
She already left.
Councilor Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilor Keach.
No.
Councilor Kennison.
We're out of order.
Yes.
Councilor Kretovic.
Aye, Captain.
Councilor Mattson.
Yes.
Councilor Nyan.
Yes.
Councilor Pierce.
Ditto.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Councilor Rice Hawkins.
Yes.
Councilor Todd.
You bet.
Councilor Werner.
No question about it.
Motion passes 14-1.
Thank you very much. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. We'll see you on Monday. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, folks.